Today on
Doomed!
Why are Trump-loving billionaires pouring money into a local New York City Council race? Today on the show, we have Moumita Ahmed, a former Bernie Sanders organizer who is running for election in this Queen's race. And she's the candidate these Trump-loving billionaires are all after. Why are they pumping money into this race? What is she doing to get them so riled up? We will find out right now because I'm about to talk to her. So let's pull her up on the feed now. And 1 second. And hello, Moumita. How are you doing today? Hold on. I don't hear you. Something just went muted there. Could you talk again?
Hello?
Oh, there we go. Your system got muted for a second. There you go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt, for having me. It's good to be here. I'm doing well. Just super busy with campaigning and calling voters. You know how it is.
Oh, I hear you. I think there was something up with the Skype connection, but we should be all good now. I hear you. You hear me. So let's get right into this because I'm really glad you could take the time now because
can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly fine now. Yep, I think whatever it was is fixed now. So I'm really glad you were able to take the time now because this special election is actually coming up this Tuesday, February 2nd. And over the past few weeks, it seems like there has been a complete attack campaign on just one candidate in this race. And this is a race there's no incumbent. This is why there's a special election on Tuesday. This is an open field. How many candidates are running again?
There are 9 candidates.
Now, 9 candidates are running, yet all of a sudden, in the past few weeks, there have been flyers, online advertisements just going everywhere. Campaign flyers being put in people's mailboxes in your district. What is it? District 24. And it's all, out of all 9 candidates, for some reason, all these attack ads are just going after you. What's going on here?
Well, we are actually the only renter running in this race. And we're running on a platform to hold billionaire real estate developers accountable who harass tenants, who raise the property taxes in our district and displace communities of color. And we've been very vocal about our campaign not taking money from real estate developers. We put out a platform to promote more tenant associations, to provide right to counsel. And these are all policies that threaten billionaires who exploit working class tenants like myself who live in rent stabilized apartments. So, I'm a little surprised that they chose to put out so many mailers in one tiny little district. But also not surprised that they find someone like me who is a renter, who's working class, who have vocally talked about billionaires and real estate developers, oppression of renters, right? That they would choose to attack me, I guess. And plus, I have all of the progressives behind me, united behind me, and I think that is what they see as a big, big threat.
Now, first of all, I'm shocked that there's 9 candidates running and you're the only person who rents. Like, you're the only person who's a tenant. Everyone else owns where they live. I mean, that's in Queens out of 9 candidates. I'm a little bit shocked about that, to be honest. I mean, that's crazy. What is the demographic makeup of your district?
Yeah, so actually it's a minority majority district. 70% of the district is Black and brown immigrant, 30% is South Asian, one of the largest South Asian population here in all of New York City. Also, this is a district with a large Muslim population, majority Bangladeshis, just like me, and majority renters and small homeowners. So it is interesting that I am the only renter, considering during the pandemic, our district was in the red zone, and so many of us ended up in homeless shelters, or unable to pay rent or struggling to pay rent. And in our district, 1 in 14 children are homeless, which is a really high number. So it's interesting, but it also speaks to the all of New York City and the lack of representation when it comes to working class people in our city, right? Which is something that we're all trying to fight over and over again in every single race where there has been a progressive person versus a establishment incumbent.
Now, I just want to rewind for a second, because I don't think we established actually who the they is in the they are who are attacking you. Like, we're not talking, like, obviously your opponents, the other 8 candidates, are going after you. But when we say they, as in the big money people who are funding this massive print and online ad campaign against just you, nobody else. Who are we talking about here in the they? Like, who are these people who are after you who aren't your opponents?
Yeah, we're talking about this PAC called Common Sense NYC, and their beneficiaries are Stephen Ross, who is a Trump supporter, he's worth $7.2 billion. He's on the list of 25 richest New Yorkers. He's a real estate developer, Trump supporter. You've got Isaac Ash, who inherited his billions, brought $18.5 million Manhattan duplex with a helicopter pad and everything, marble floors, fancy free elevator, is the CEO of United Legwear, and he has manufacturing garment factories in Bangladesh. So he not only displaces communities here, he exploits workers in Bangladesh who are mostly women. So it's very interesting that he contributed to this campaign to take down possibly the first Bangladeshi woman elected into city council. Also, Jack Kerr, who is worth $1.1 billion, also inherited, just like Trump, his fortune. And he's also a real estate developer. So these are the 3 who we call the billionaire bullies that are coming after us, because, we are working class and we're opposing real estate developers, and we're demanding that housing justice. We're demanding housing justice for working families who are suffering because of the pandemic.
Right. Now what do you think, though, is because I think a lot of people this past year with the pandemic, when they were watching TV every day when New York was the epicenter of the entire country, and at one point it was the epicenter of the world of the pandemic. Everyone was watching every day Andrew Cuomo and Governor Andrew Cuomo and Mayor Bill de Blasio basically going at it through the television. And it became clear that, the mayor of New York has, he's the mayor of the biggest city in the country. And he has very little power when compared to what the governor can do. The governor basically makes decisions for the city, and the mayor basically has to go along with them. I mean, there's very little he actually has control over, unfortunately. So, the city council, while a very important position, still the state government seems to still have power over the city. But why do you think they're going after you then? Like, what is, obviously city council is important. The mayor, mayor's office is important. But what is the reason that they are spending this money? Do you know how much they're spending on to
Yeah,
attack you, by the way?
they already spent $178,000, which is more than what I received in matching funds. Um, and it's ridiculous. And I think I have a good idea why. First of all, our candidacy isn't just about a city council race. We're literally asking for to tax the rich and working with legislators to do it. I have the endorsement of state senators like Julia Salazar and assembly members like Ron Kim, who have been vocal opponents of Governor Cuomo. And in fact, one of my opponents is James Gennaro, who was used to work or was working for the governor as and the current council member who just resigned, Rory Lansman, actually resigned from his post to go work for the governor. The governor actually grew up here in Jamaica, and so did Donald Trump. Both of them grew up in my district. And so this is kind of, I guess, like a childhood interest of theirs, because, well, it's an interest, it's a district where they have interest, perhaps due to like their childhood. It is a stronghold of the county machine in some ways, the old county machine. And I have a feeling, given the ties the governor has with real estate developers, it makes sense that these people are seriously threatened by our candidacy, because it represents more than just a city council race. It's the first ranked choice voting election where so many progressives have united behind our campaign for housing justice, right? And we all know that housing justice means holding the real estate developers accountable. And those are the people who give money to the governor. So our win would energize the progressive movement, and it would sort of create a domino effect. Right, and empower other city council candidates. And that's what they don't want. They don't want the first South Asian elected into city council to be a working class person who's a renter. And it's interesting because my opponent, James Gennaro, he is pro real estate. And in fact, the treasurer of this PAC, Common Sense, is Jeff Leb, who is the former ex-chief of staff of James Gennaro. And we actually called out James Gennaro, where we were like, why are you attacking me when it's ranked choice voting? And he was like, I didn't do it. I had nothing to do with it. And they were like, Jeff Leb is literally in his LinkedIn profile. It says he was your former chief of staff. And he was like, we're a campaign. That's a PAC. We can't coordinate. And we're just like, yeah, your former, and then he pretended not to even know Jeff Leb, which was really bizarre because again, it's literally on his LinkedIn. It says he was his former chief of staff. So they're playing all kinds of dirty tricks, to destroy our campaign. And they've even mobilized some of our opponents, the other South Asians, to and pressured them to speak out against me. And all of it is just so, there's so many nuances to it, from like they're using the same tactics as colonizers did, when they, like, the divide and conquer tactics that we read about we read about the colonization of Black and brown folks. All of those tactics have been used in our district.
Now, I'm really glad you brought up the domino effect, actually, because I was gonna go to that next. So, and you've perfect segue. If you're not living in New York City, if you're not from New York, you might not realize that this year there's going to be how many races? How many New York City Council seats are up for grabs? Something like
there are 16. There are 16 up for grabs, and there's I think like 500 candidates running.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy, and there's going to be a lot of socialist candidates running. And as far as I know, are there any DSA members or avowed leftists who are on the New York City Council right now?
There are progressives in city council, but there hasn't been an avowed DSA DSA candidate. So we could potentially have a socialist caucus in city council. And not only that, even just having a huge progressive caucus or like 16 council members who are progressive means that we can actually stop any budget that doesn't center human rights, that doesn't want to shift the money away from policing and investing in our Black and Brown communities and housing. We could pass legislation and reform the ULURP process and really actually do a lot that, as you mentioned earlier, that oftentimes the mayor doesn't really have a lot of power. But with a city council that's progressive, we can make sure the $88 billion budget that the city does have is actually used properly. Because, I mean, let's be honest, the mayor has his flaws too. Like, he tends to blame it on the governor, but he's also in the pocket of the police union. And
Right.
the police get like $10 billion. Their budget is huge.
Right.
And right now, so many families are struggling to pay rent. So we do have the money to help all of the low income, marginalized, working class families in New York City, but we don't because of this like struggle between the governor and the mayor. But hey, the one thing where they both agree on is we don't really need to tax the rich. We don't really need to defund the police, and and it's total BS.
Right, right. This is the first race of the year of all these local. There's gonna be a new mayor. Where we're talking about De Blasio. You win. How long are you going to be in office with De Blasio as mayor? Not very long, right? I mean, he's gone
No,
after this year. Yeah.
and 4 months.
What's that?
Like 4 months max,
Right,
because I have
right.
to run again in June. Yeah.
Right. So, this is an opportunity to completely reform New York City politics, and you will set the stage with this special election on Tuesday. Another thing, is this the first ever New York City election with ranked choice voting?
That's right. It is indeed.
You
So
are
there's a lot of firsts happening here.
this is and you if I'm not mistaken, you were one of the major proponents to of ranked choice voting because it just became the thing in New York now.
Yeah, I helped pass it with Common Cause. I was the field and education director. I was also on the lawsuit to when the 5 council members sued ranked choice voting and tried to overturn the will of the voters. I was one of the people mentioned on the lawsuit as a potential witness. And because this is an election where majority of South Asians live, like it's a district where there's a majority of South Asians, and we're trying to elect the first South Asian. And ranked choice voting, consequently, is a is the data shows that RCV helps elect more people from these different communities. Um, Having people like me on the lawsuit really helped. And so we won because of that. And so I've been a big supporter. I'm also the only candidate who's been talking about who I would rank as my second and third choice. So yeah, it's a really historic race. We're also like the guinea pigs. So
For people who might not know, what is ranked choice voting?
yeah, the good question. Ranked choice voting is just basically instead of voting for just one candidate, you can rank your top 5 or 4 or 3, whatever you wish. And if you want to just stick to your one, that's fine too. But when you rank your candidate, it's good because in a race where there's multiple candidates, sometimes maybe 2 progressives running will split the vote, or 3 South Asians running might split the vote, and then an incumbent or will win. So ranked choice voting allows different people with different ethnic backgrounds and ideas to still compete, to be able to compete. And what happens is, in a race where there are multiple candidates, if no candidate gets 51% vote, then whoever has the least amount of votes will then get eliminated. And all of the people that voted for that person, then their second choice will count and then get distributed to the remaining candidates or candidate or candidates. And this just makes it more democratic. So whoever gets elected are elected by a majority.
Now there's been a few. I mean, we talked about the Trump supporting billionaires who are after you because you threaten their real estate empire in District 24 somehow, which is, I mean, I think you do. If you know, but that's crazy that they're putting that much money into it to try to stop it. But there's been a few other controversies too. There was a whole thing I saw where the other 8 candidates were all fighting for endorsements from leftist groups and then backed away from it after they decided that, I mean, obviously after you got all the endorsements from the progressive groups, all of a sudden it seems like they decided to attack leftists and socialists and bizarre, what groups, by the way, endorsed you, if you want to name drop some of them? Because it's been it's been great to see so many leftist groups basically unite behind a single candidate. Doesn't always happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible, and all of them have been so integral to our campaign. I've been endorsed by Working Families Party, who we all know to be very powerful when it comes to passing progressive laws and supporting progressive candidates. We have Communication Workers of America, which is a local one union in the district. We have the Social Workers Union. We have New York Communities for Change. We have Hispanic American Voter Association, Muslim Democratic Club of New York, Muslim Entrepreneurs Association, the Jewish Vote, Bangladeshi Americans for Political Progress, Asian American Chamber of Commerce. We have Sister Diaspora. We have Amplify Her. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Cynthia Nixon, Jimmy Van Bramer, State Senator Julia Salazar, Assemblymember Ron Kim. I mean, like, it's one of the most beautiful, diverse coalitions for ever. And I am so proud of that. And everybody is just incredible. And they've been really helping us in the last couple of days. The other candidates, maybe some of them did start out a little progressive and decided that, Moumita's getting all of the support. So perhaps, I don't know. I did see a few candidates railing against DSA, although I will say I'm not a DSA endorsed candidate. Unfortunately, I didn't make the cut. But I am a member of Democratic Socialists of America, and my values are pretty much aligned with the values of Senator Bernie Sanders and AOC and so many others. Right.
So there's another that's quite the list, I'll tell you. Congrats, because that's great to hear. Now, there was another controversy that I saw, and this one really, honestly, it really bothered me. Because there's nothing I hate more than bad faith attacks. And this was one that, there were attacks against you claiming that you were anti-Semitic or you said something anti-Semitic because of a single tweet. What happened there?
Yeah, and it was, so basically what happened was 6 years ago, when I didn't have a big Twitter following, by the way, I had responded, not even liked, just responded to a tweet from another person. So I didn't actually tweet this. A person tweeted a photo that said boycott Israel, and it was a picture of a Palestinian baby in a platter with like a bullet on its head. I mean, it is a gruesome picture, and it does, looking back and looking at it, I realized that it is it does fuel anti-Semitism because, and I didn't know this, but I found out like later on, especially once it was brought up, is that it kind of like hints at blood libel, which is something I had never heard of before. So I can understand why that image is disturbing. But at that time, 6 years ago, I didn't know that. I didn't know. I just saw the word boycott Israel, right? And a baby. And at that time, there were multiple articles about how Palestinian children were being used as shields, right? And then, but also at the same time, uh, the IDF have a history of targeting Palestinian youths and killing young Palestinians. And so I just responded that to the tweet, I responded that my heart beats for the children of Palestine. And so I don't think saying that my heart beats for the children of Palestine is anti-Semitic in any way.
It's not.
Right? But I can understand that the image that somebody else posted can fuel anti-Semitism. And for that, I did apologize and clarify and say, like, look, I didn't know. I had no idea. And but this is my position. I support the two-state solution. But I do support the right to boycott, even if I don't partake in BDS, or even, it doesn't matter what my opinion is on it. What matters is that everybody has a right to boycott because it's our First Amendment right. And I think that's a fair position to hold, especially in a district where you have people from different ethnicities and religious groups who have differing opinions here. And I think some of our opponents took advantage of that, actually all of them, and decided to double down and attack me and call me, condemn anti-Semitism as if like I've said something very anti-Semitic. And it's really ridiculous because I've supported Senator Bernie Sanders. And my policies are the same when it comes to, it's the same as Bernie Sanders. So it was very exhausting and just kind of a traumatic experience as a person of color, as someone who comes from a oppressed community, right? It's natural for me to side or sympathize with other oppressed communities. And that was totally lost in some of our elected officials in the district, including our former city council member, who all of a sudden had all of this opinion.
Well, I wasn't expecting you actually to bring up as much as you did there, and I'm, to me, it shows that you are extremely transparent, and it's at the same time didn't just turn around and change your views on the situation affecting the Palestinians, which I honestly think most candidates would have. You are drawing a very careful line around what you thought was inappropriate, but while still keeping your position, which I honestly really respect. But I actually brought it up because I wanted to bring up the fact that there's nothing that bothers me more than these claims of anti-Semitism anytime someone, usually a progressive or a leftist, criticizes Israel. I'm religiously, I'm not Jewish, but I am ethnically Jewish. I am an Ashkenazi Jew. My father is Jewish religiously. My grandfather fought in World War II. I actually wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my grandfather fighting in World War II, because that's where he met my grandma. And the idea that someone standing up for the Palestinians and speaking up against the country of Israel, and when they do, they're usually
government.
Right. Exactly. It's no different than, if you were someone who was crossing the southern border and your family was separated and you said something about America. Clearly, you were talking about the Trump administration because you're coming to America. I mean, you know what I mean? You don't hate the country. You hate the government that broke up your family. The idea, too, that there isn't a leftist or progressive movement in Israel that's also fighting against the Netanyahu regime is bizarre to me for Democrats in this country to not stand with. That's who you should be fighting for. There's an Israeli leftist movement that honestly is living under a government, Netanyahu's government, and you should be siding with them over the Netanyahu regime. And third of all,
Yeah.
this state, New Yorkers are so anti-Trump. There is no world leader, not even Putin, and they love bringing up Russia, obviously, not even Putin was as strong of an ally to Trump as Netanyahu. They were like this, Netanyahu and Trump. There's no way you could be anti-Trump and at the same time not criticize the Israeli government who bolstered him internationally. And so, I really bothered me seeing those attacks against you. And I just wanted to take a minute here to say that, you handled it extremely well. And it's bullshit. It's bullshit, honestly. And it shows that they're running scared, honestly.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And, I'm so proud to have the support of organizations like the Jewish Vote, which is the PAC, the political arm of Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, an organization which has existed for 30 plus years. I am in this movement because of our Jewish brothers and sisters in the left. My mentor is an Israeli Jewish man. So many of the women and men who have backed my campaign are from this community. And, it really did hurt. And I felt ashamed because I felt like I hurt them. And by not understanding as well as I should have, maybe in terms of it was just a very traumatizing experience to be mischaracterized like that. But I'm so grateful to all of the people, including especially the Jewish Vote, who supported me, who stood up and helped me navigate this. What they said, look, you're not the only one. You have good company. You have Jamal Bowman. You have Ilhan Omar. There's so many leftist women of color, men of color who have been accused of anti-Semitism for BS like that, reasons that aren't even really legitimate, and delegitimize in an attempt to delegitimize us. And so that was really encouraging to see. And, Sarah Silverman retweeted us, and so did Mara Wilson. So these
That's great.
really powerful Jewish women actually amplified our phone banks. And so that was really cool. And I mean, as I said, we have a very diverse coalition, and I'm so proud of it and so grateful every day.
I think also part of the reason why it bothers me so much is because, people who know this show and know my work know that one of my main beat is covering far-right extremism and right-wing conspiracy theories. And in that world, I have come across some truly grotesque people who are actual anti-Semites. They are literal white supremacists and neo-Nazis. And I've been called every name in the book from some of these people who know that I track them and watch what they do. And the idea, whenever a leftist is attacked as an anti-Semite, it's just so, to me, it's so craven that they would say that when there are people out there who truly are loving that they're calling leftists that, so they could hide under the cover of that. And it's just, when people do that, honestly, they're shooting themselves in the foot. But let's move on here. Obviously, you're running for a district in Queens, and this borough has been hit hard by COVID. While you've been campaigning, what have you come across in terms of maybe your eyes have been open to something specific, or maybe you knew and you're running for a specific on a specific COVID related platform here. What have the people in your district been dealing with when it comes to the pandemic? Where do they need help, and what can the city and the state and the government do for them?
Yeah, so so much. I mean, there's so much left for them to do, and they've done nothing almost during the pandemic in our district. Our district is a transportation desert, so when COVID hit, it was really difficult for most people to access food pantries. Elderly people didn't have access to a computer to fill out a EBT, food assistance and things like that. And so we started the Queens Mutual Aid Network to support these families. I saw so many women and families end up in homeless shelters where the virus was it was like a hotbed for the virus. And I recall actually helping this one woman who escaped from domestic violence get her support, housing support. I ran into mothers who were crying and looking for their relatives to take care of their kids because they ended up in homeless shelters with them, and families essentially separated because of that. And just the sheer amount of deaths. We had entire senior center where there were so multiple seniors dragged out of in stretchers. I mean, it was an intense 6 months, and I myself had COVID because I was out there helping community members. We're a working class immigrant community, and just like a month ago, there was an article that came out which said that 50% of immigrants in New York City didn't even receive pandemic assistance and or unemployment. 51%, 55% were African American, 56% were Latino, half of immigrant communities didn't receive it. So and our city council did nothing. Our city council hired military contractors to provide food, high fructose, sugary desserts, and I don't know, like fruit cups for seniors. I mean, all of it was just so backwards. Like, if we're going to try to help people, let's try to design or relief and programs that actually and take into account the people that need it, right? But they didn't do any of that. They did things for PR to just be like, oh, look, I have 500,000 halal meals that we're giving to our Muslim community. Meanwhile, it's military contractors who are making it. Meanwhile, our mom and pop shops that make ethnically appropriate foods are going out of business. Why didn't we just give them that money? Right?
Right.
So
Right.
these are the things that we're fighting for. We're fighting for representation, seat at the table, so people look at us and hear us and understand us. It's just not happening. And it's because of the real estate developers. It's because of the fossil fuel industry, because of the police unions. They have too much money, too much influence in our city council. They're the ones who decide the $88 billion budget and where it's going to go, not us. And we need to change that.
Right. Absolutely. So, with only a few days left to go, what's the? Oh yeah, I should mention this because you were on this show a year ago, a little bit less than a year ago. I think like 8 months ago, because you were running for what were you running for again?
I was running for district leader,
Now this city
which is
council is obviously a big step up, so good for you for
yeah.
running a great campaign here. But
Thank you.
what did you learn from running as district leader that you think helped you out in your city council campaign?
Well, I saw that my story of being disenfranchised really mobilized our community and understand the importance of voting, even for a party position. And part of the reason why I ran for city council is because I was disenfranchised. And in fact, around that time, my assembly members spent like $30,000 on mailers against me, even though I wasn't even running against him, to promote the district leader candidate. So he had his thumb on the scale. And even now, recently with city council, when we tried to get our matching funds, they delayed us. they made us notarize every single small cash contribution that we had from our neighbors who gave me $10, $20. And it just showed that how even when we try to do good things like the matching funds program, which is supposed to help working class candidates like me compete, that we set up these like barriers because most immigrants don't really participate in the credit card economy. Like they mostly participate in the cash economy because majority of them don't have bank accounts or multiple credit cards, right? So many of my neighbors gave me $10, $20 contributions, and the CFB question, maybe they saw 10 of them to them that looked a little like off or whatever, because and they decided to cancel all my cash contributions so that I didn't receive matching funds right away and delayed my matching funds. I had to go notarize every single one of them. They claimed, why are 48 people from this one address giving you money? And I was like, if they had just done a simple Google search, they would have seen that it's my apartment. It's my neighbors.
Wow.
It was ridiculous. And eventually we got our matching funds, by the way. But it was delayed, and that really set us back. So one thing I learned from my district leader race is expect it. Expect to be disenfranchised, but be on your toes. Oops.
For people who don't know, actually, because I'm remembering it right now as we're speaking, you had to go to court to get your name back on the ballot, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
What happened there again? Because you used the name, your Americanized name instead of your birth name. Explain to people what happened there, because it really does go to show like how the system is extra, not just stacked. It's not just stacked against the everyday citizen. It's also extra stacked against people who aren't who weren't born here or weren't born to a white family. It's different for everybody who comes to this country and their children, and you had to face one of those uphill battles just to get your name on the ballot. Oh, looks like we dropped for a second. 1 second. Let me pick up here. It's all right. Let me call Moumita right back. Hello.
Hey,
Everything all right?
sorry. I don't know what happened.
All good. So why don't you tell people what I'm not sure where you got cut off, but why don't you tell people what happened when you had to go to court last year just to get your name back on the ballot?
Yeah, basically, I use my name Moumita because Bengalis have two names. Like they have their Muslim name and then they have their Bengali name, which is derived from the Sanskrit. And it's just Moumita is just easier to pronounce than my real name, which is like Ahia or something like that. And it's like really hard to pronounce. And I've had to deal with that my entire life, people butchering my name immediately. And it affected me mentally. So I've been using Moumita. I'm verified on Twitter as Moumita. And that's what I ran. Bernie's campaign actually submitted a name appeal to the State Board of Election, and they approved me using Moumita on the Bernie delegate petitions. But when I ran for district leader, the New York City Board of Election threw me off the ballot for having a different name than my voter registration card. And so we actually sued and we won. And we set a precedence that the BOE cannot discriminate you if your intent to use a different name is because that's the name you go by and that you're not trying to mislead voters. And that's the whole point. Like you're allowed to use a different name as long as you're not misleading voters. And in this case, we provided ample proof to them showing that we're not, that this is the name that I've been using. So that was the story. And a lot of people, like Asian Americans, for example, have their Chinese name and then their American name. So
right.
many people that I spoke with, this story really resonated with them because, I'm not alone when it comes to struggling with names.
Right, right. Now, Moumita, the election is on Tuesday. That's February 2nd.
Mhm.
What is the home? What's going on in the home stretch here, and how can people help rally voters in your district? Because I mean, it's possible that there are people listening to this who are in your district, but also obviously just because of how these local races are, more likely that most listeners here are outside your district, but they too can get involved and help out your campaign and help set that domino effect for the city council races later in the year, probably even the mayor's race in New York City. And in the bigger picture, leftists winning any race is good for leftists as a whole across the country. So how can people anywhere help you in this home stretch here?
Yeah, well, if you like the story of David and Goliath, this is it. And you can, it's a pandemic, so we're welcoming any sort of remote help that you all can give. Phone banking, our constituents, texting them, whatever it is to get them to turn out on Tuesday, or for early voting, which is until Sunday. And you can sign up at www.votemomita.com/volunteer. Or if you have the ability to come out on Tuesday and take a shift to watch over a poll site and hand out flyers to voters and talk to them about ranking me as their number one or number two. It's a lot of fun. We have really great food in the district, so we're going to be going around polling location to polling location, mobilizing voters. So those are the two things people can do. And if you can't do either, I could always use more money.
Right.
So feel free to donate as well.
Now, also, if they still match, right? If you live in New York City and you donate, your whatever you donate, how much more do they give to you from the city?
Times 8. So if you give $10, the city will give me back $90.
That's listen. If you live in New York City, that's a good way to everyone's talking about the GameStop stocks and all that, the stocks and doubling their money right now. You can take your money and times it by 8 by donating it to Moumita.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at some of these flyers and the campaign against you, and it's just, it doesn't even seem like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't even seem like these, because it looks like they've put out flyers, not really endorsing, but telling different people to vote for different candidates. They haven't even lined up behind a single candidate. This is just a campaign against you, not really for anybody else.
Yeah, and also what's really crazy is the first mailer that they sent out was a picture of me hugging a Bernie doll and kissing my Bernie tattoo. And it was hilarious because it was around the same time when Bernie just went viral. Everybody was posting like Bernie memes of him sitting with his little mittens, and it was really like good for me, because anyone who saw that was probably like, okay, this girl likes Bernie Sanders, who is amazing.
Right.
And it actually did mobilize a lot of people in our district that maybe we hadn't even thought about reaching out to, because literally after they sent out that mailers, we got so many texts. Even texts from people who hadn't responded, like that we texted like 2 months ago. They like all of a sudden responded like, we just got your mailer, we're voting for you.
Right.
So
my favorite one here actually is the one that calls you in really bold red text, Moumita Ahmed, too dangerous. And it's just like, I don't know if you've ever watched, King of Queens, the sitcom that ended many, many years ago, but there's a scene with Jerry Stiller that always made me laugh, where him and this character Deacon get into a fight, and so Deacon says to everyone at all of Jerry Stiller's friends, "Everyone, you should know this. but Jerry Stiller's character is a bad man. And then Jerry Stiller's character turns around then and says to all them, "Did you hear that, everybody? I'm bad." And so that's what this reminds me of. It makes you look really cool. I mean, I would turn it around, too dangerous to the Trump-loving billionaire real estate moguls. That's who you're too dangerous to.
Yeah, it's also similar to when somebody called AOC dangerous, and she was like, "I am a dangerous woman, right? I'm a dangerous woman to the billionaires, to the fossil fuel industry," and she went off on this really beautiful rant. And you know what I mean? You're totally right. Like, I am freaking dangerous, and it's funny how the rhetoric is so similar. Like, all of the women of color who have run for office, men or women or progressive, whoever, right? Like, we get called dangerous. Like, at this point, I mean, yeah, we might as well embrace it. And but yeah, it is. The flyers are just ridiculous. And the funny thing is, somebody from California actually messaged me. They were a candidate, also a renter who ran in California, I believe San Diego or something like that. And they were attacked with a mailer that was very, very similar to ours, like the design, the rhetoric. So, you know, the billionaires, they have their little campaign firms that they use to to attack people like me. So we need to also be as organized and united behind our candidates, and actually start paying attention to these local races.
Right, right. Moumita, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I just want to make it clear if anyone didn't get it during this interview, but I am endorsing you fully in this district race. And by the way, which neighborhoods are in this district? Because if you are in one of these neighborhoods, then you should go and vote for Moumita this coming Tuesday. Why don't you drop those neighborhoods right here?
Yeah, thank you. So Pomanock, parts of Flushing, Kew Gardens Hills, Briarwood, Jamaica States, Jamaica Hills, Hillcrest, Hillside Avenue, Parsons Boulevard, Electchester. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Those are all of the neighborhoods, and you can always go to whorepsme.org to find out if you're in the district or not. But please, even if you don't, if you have friends in the district, I could really use the help. Every vote counts. It's such a low turnout election that literally every single vote will count. And I know this because last time when I ran for district leader, I lost by like 50 votes, which is
how many people are expected to vote? Or I don't want to guess that, I guess, but how many people usually historically vote in the city council district 24? I mean, I guess they're not usually special elections though, right? That's where the real kicker. But I guess in a regular year. Election year, what's the usual voter turnout for District 24 in a citywide election like this?
Yeah, the turnout is really low. It's like 4,000 max, like 3,000. And
so
these guys
are pumping money in though. That's going to end up being like an extraordinary, because I'm guessing they're going to look at it as every person who did not vote for you. And when you get down to that, I mean, obviously you're going to get a number of, because it's so. And as far as I've seen, you're, at least when it comes to the endorsements and the attention, well-deserved attention, earned media, you are running away with it right now. And, they're going to end up spending an exorbitant amount per voter who didn't vote for you. Like, it's going to be something ridiculous for a city council special election race, these Trump billionaires.
In the middle of winter, so it's not like the turnout's going to be huge. And, I think they had good reason to do it. I was featured on New York One. I think they also did some kind of polling or whatever. I don't know what it is, but they definitely did something to determine that I am a big threat. And Yeah, it is a low turnout election. Only 500 people voted for so far for early voting. So really, every single vote will count. So hopefully enough. I know you have a big reach, and so many other people that support us have a big reach. Our video got over 60,000 views on Twitter. So we are running an aspirational campaign, and our hope is that because of our story, people, even if they don't rank us as number one, they'll rank us as number two. And you know what? These billionaires kind of sealed the deal for us, because who doesn't love a good story of a David and Goliath, basically?
Right.
So,
Right.
so thank you, billionaires.
Right. Yeah. Moumita Ahmed, everyone. She's dangerous.
Dangerous. Oh my God.
The website is votemoumita.com. I wanted to drop that one more time for everyone listening. Check it out. See how you could help out. If you're in District 24 in Queens, vote Tuesday. Good luck, Moumita. I'm pulling for you.
Thank you. Vote Mo for dangerous women.
I like it. Take care. Have a great night. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Matt. Take care. Bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. There's the Skype. Yeah, Susan Sarandon retweeted this one out before we started. That's cool. See, Moumita's got support from all over. And I know it really does, honestly, show, all this money that's being poured into this race from these, and it's not just a candidate who has, a wealthy relative or is wealthy themselves, because then there's, there's something self-interest that, direct self-interest there. They want to get themselves or their brother or son or who their immediate family member elected. But that's not what's happening here. These are just real estate billionaires who view Moumita as a threat. And I think it's because, obviously, having a someone in office, in any sort of office like her, is a threat to them. But I also think that this race will reverberate throughout the rest of these upcoming city council races in New York City. And with an activist movement in New York that's calling for rent forgiveness and for, of course, of the pandemic, obviously, calling for defunding the police, and you have a mayor that can't be reelected. This is going to be a brand new mayor, and it's a really open race there, too. There's been 17 or 18 candidates. And then you have 16, I believe it was that she said, 16 more city council races. And by that, those are 16 races with no incumbent because they're term limited. So you have 16 races where someone new will be in the city council seat, period, in 16 different races. I think these New York City wealthy elites are truly worried. And her race, what happens on Tuesday, will reverberate. And I thought it was important to have her on. And, you might think it's very local because it's New York City, and I've done local New York City. I have nothing wrong with that. But I'm also stressing that it's not just a local story, because this is going to happen across the country as progressives and leftists and socialists continue to gain political power. They've seen what the AOCs can do, regardless of what maybe some contrarians on the left say about AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. You could criticize them. They're not perfect, but they're a lot better than everyone who came before them. And they see what they're doing. And they are worried. What if there was an AOC in every seat, or almost every seat, throughout the cities, throughout the states, and throughout the country? I mean, this is what they're putting their money on. They're not just spending this money because they're rich and enjoy spending their money. I mean, they do like to do that, but there's better things to waste your money on, I'm sure. I wouldn't know because I don't have any money to waste anything on. Folks, so I want to bring this up because between the last live show and this live show, I put up a video on YouTube that has, it's not super viral, but it's gained traction within the online leftist world that consumes leftist media. Because I guess I need to add some context here before I go into it. Last Friday, I saw that Jimmy Dore, the YouTuber, leftist YouTuber, he's almost 1 million subscribers, used to be on TYT, but then went out on his own and just has the Jimmy Dore show, and it's very popular on YouTube. He had on a Boogaloo. Well, he first, actually, the day before that, saw a Boogaloo Boy video and was sort of wooed by what the Boogaloo Boy had to say. And then the following day, last Friday, a week ago now, jeez, time flies, Jimmy Dore invited that Boogaloo Boy onto his show for an interview. And I made a video basically about that because there was a whole discussion online about whether what Jimmy did was good or not, and whether, based on what that Boogaloo Boy said on Jimmy's show, should the left unite with the Boogaloo Boys? Now, I don't have a problem with anyone going on any show. I'm not one of those people who say, boycott Fox, boycott this show, don't go on this show, don't go on that show. It's your show, have on whoever you want. Or if you get invited to a show, feel free to go on if you want, whatever. But in these situations, you also have to know what you're doing or realize what can happen when you have someone on your program. And let's take the Jimmy Dore thing, for instance. If you run a leftist show or a progressive show or anything left of center show, and you have on a right winger, you need to make sure you're in control of this interview and that you are pressing them on who they are and you're criticizing them and critiquing them. So then at the end of that interview, your viewers aren't going, oh man, maybe that right winger isn't so bad. No, that's not the purpose of that. You just gave that guy a free platform to reach out to your audience. Why would you do that? If you have someone like that on your show, it should be to peek into the mind of these people so that your audience can understand how they work and what motivates them, and can be extra knowledgeable and educated about the right. Or you press them on their own views and basically bring them to your side if it's possible. Like at the end, if I had a Boogaloo Boy on my show, at the end of that interview, there would be not a single person in my audience going, maybe I should reach out to the Boogaloo Boys. They're not so bad. No, in fact, it would be the Boogaloo Boy I had on going, hey, maybe my views aren't all there. Maybe I need to reach out more to the left and understand what's going on. Maybe I'm not really that. I've had right-wingers on my show before. People know that. I've had a prominent Trump supporter who used to be a prominent black Trump supporter who used to work for Turning Point USA. I had on the Kent State gun girl, Caitlin Bennett. There was no one who listened to that interview and thought, "Hey, maybe I should show up to Kent State with some guns too." No. I mean, I literally called her to her face. I challenged her on her beliefs, and I said to her face that at the very least, and this is before she became the Kent State gun girl. This is when she was a former Turning Point USA activist, and she had just done the infamous Kent State diaper protest, and that's when I had her on. And I basically said to her, at the very least, if I'm being generous, you are ignorant. Like I said, it's very easy to talk to these people and have them on your show if that's what you want to do. And then there's this whole conversation now. Maybe there's this whole conversation now. I just read a comment and said maybe by accident. There's this whole conversation now too about, what the left and the right should unite. We should listen. If you want to reach out to an individual Boogaloo boy or a number of individual Boogaloo boys, if you feel like that's something you need to do, then sure, go ahead and do that. Sit down and have a discussion with them. I don't have a problem with that either. But that doesn't mean you put them on your show with an audience of 800,000+ people. I think that's what Jimmy Dore's subscriber base is. And let them talk about how great the Boogaloo Boys are. Oh, I still got the Skype logo on here. Whoops. Thank you for whoever told me that. NR Gray, thank you about that. I would talk to anyone on this show. Hell, I don't know if you guys remember, but a couple of shows ago, not the last time Jared Holt was on, but a couple of shows ago when Jared Holt was on, Baked Alaska jumped into the chat room. And he wanted to call into the show, but I don't know. I don't remember what happened, but we didn't get to calls or something that day. Because I think Jared stayed on for the whole show, the second half too. And then he emailed me about setting something up. Obviously, we won't get around to doing that now because Baked Alaska is probably going to be spending some time in jail for storming the Capitol. But if I talk to Baked Alaska, there would be no opportunity for him to push anything. There would be no opportunity for him to, and you could insert Baked. I'm just using the Baked Alaska example because he tried to talk to me. He wanted to come on the show. Insert anyone there. There would be no promotion of their ideologies. I mean, you just have to know how to handle this stuff. You don't fawn over them because they said that they are pro-LGBT while they're showing up armed to Black Lives Matter protests and agitating BLM protesters. So yeah, I made a video about Jimmy having the Boogaloo on. It's a quick summary of who the Boogaloo Boys are. It is also a investigation into the specific Boogaloo Boy and the overall Michigan Boogaloo Boy movement, which he is a part of, that Jimmy Dore had on his show. And if you're a Jimmy Dore fan, I don't want to get into that right now. The video does not, and I made sure of this, the video does not just dunk on Jimmy Dore. And honestly, I went out of my way a little bit to make it not about Jimmy Dore. I just use him as the base for the video to basically, because to me, the real danger, the real thing I was worried about are these leftists who are now coming out of the woodwork talking about uniting with the Boogaloos and reaching out to them. And also completely distorting history with their bizarre, inaccurate belief of who Fred Hampton was and who he reached out to. I mean, so youtube.com/Matt Binder. Check that video out. I want to give a shout out specifically to Vosh and the Surfs, who watched the video on their live streams and then told their followers, and they had kind words to say about it, and then they told their followers to go subscribe to my channel. In just a few days, I went from something like 7,000 something subs to I think we're close to 12,000 subscribers. we broke 10K in a few hours. So it was really cool. So thanks, guys. I am gonna now. Patreon.com/MattBinder. One thing I did blow it on is I completely blew it when it came to connecting the YouTube video that everyone was watching and sharing to the Patreon page. Always a terrible self-promoter, aren't I? Patreon.com/MattBinder. If you can afford to support this show, and when I say this show, I mean all the work that I do, because that's what the Patreon page does. I simply ask for $5 a month, but you can give less or you can give more. And that completely funds everything I do. The show, any videos I do. Honestly, I would love to do more of those Jimmy Dore videos. And from the response, I'm going to. And the Boogaloo Boy videos, I should call it. And I'm going to. But, let's talk about a scenario here where, like, I had the same number of subscribers to my Patreon page that, like, I'm not even going to use the Chapo guys because I don't really need that much. What the Michael Brooks show had when Michael was growing his show, or something like that. I would do this. I think you'd get videos from me like that all the time because I'd have the time to do it. I'd be able to make this my full-time endeavor. But right now, it's basically I fit this stuff in every ounce of spare time I can, and all your money goes to all your money goes to building out this show. I'm having a bit of this today is the first time I'm using two computers for this broadcast. I'm using my MacBook for the stream, like usual. And then I don't know if you guys remembered, but I told you guys how with the Patreon, thanks to the patrons, I was able to purchase a refurbished gaming PC. And the reason I went with that is because obviously it's fast and high powered. I'm able to have a computer to monitor the show with, and because of that, this computer here was going. The streaming computer was running very smoothly. And I was able to look up stuff without any freezing or anything like that, which very often happened in the past. And also with this PC, I'm going to also do some Twitch stuff for you guys. So, two birds, one stone, right? So patreon.com/MattBinder. What else? Doomedpod.com for the podcast. Artist Riley with the super chat. Here's some money to waste. Thank you, Artist Riley. And that was a reference to me saying how I don't have any money to waste. If you can't do a monthly subscription via Patreon, if you're watching the live stream right now, you could drop a super chat, youtube.com/MattBinder. I will make sure to read all the super chats. 100%. Doomedpod.com for the podcast version of the show. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, at MattBinder. Really, search for me on any social media platform. Just type in Matt Binder in the search. I'll come up. What else? Tell your favorite podcasters, YouTubers, etc. that you want them on this show, or I should say, tell them that you want me on their show. It's all about the collabs. That's how we get the word out, right? And let's go to the second half of the show. If you're watching live, you can stick around. You could just stick around for a minute while I'm going to pull up the phone system. You'll be able to call into this show via Skype. Just type in Doomed Live, and I believe this Skype username is DoomedLive_1. But if you just type in Doomed Live, it should come up. DoomedLive_1. And if you're listening via the podcast and aren't a patron, this is where we part on this episode. Yeah, Zoe, you can call in tonight. I'm going to fire up the call-in system in a second. So give me a minute. Live stream viewers, stick around. You can just stay right here on this stream page. I'll be back in just 1 minute. Less than a minute, probably. And everybody else, see you all next time on Doomed. All right. We are back. Hello, everybody. I am now signed in to the, I should say hello, patrons. I am now signed into the Skype, Doomed Live on Skype. Feel free to call in. I will take your calls. We'll do a usual second half here. What time is it? We got, all right, cool. So we'll probably end up going to around, what time is it right now? 11 p.m. You know me. I will probably end up going over that. But I'm going to, it's late. So, but I'm here for you guys. This is what this is all about. What do I want to talk about today? Marjorie Taylor Greene is, her past is finally, here's the shocking thing to me. Now, Media Matters truly did some great work pulling up some stuff I did not see of hers. Let me get that up here, actually. But what's crazy to me is I knew about a lot of these videos and a lot of her stunts that she had pulled, like her harassing David Hogg, the student activist who was, he was a student at the Parkland shooting when it happened, and he became a gun control advocate, obviously. And there was a video going around of her harassing him in D.C., like just following him and yelling at him and stuff. And I'd seen that like a while ago. I thought that was common knowledge about who she was. But she also, as Media Matters pulled up, she also, where do we got here? She, I knew about I knew that she was a Sandy Hook truther. Obviously, I knew she was a QAnon person. All right, this is one I didn't know about specifically. This is what they pulled, they found today. In 2019, just last year, it's 2021 now, but not long ago, she had talked about how she believed that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was replaced with a body double. That is like some legit far-right conspiracy theory shit right there. That's how you know she was a legit QAnon person. Another one I didn't know about that Media Matters also pulled is that now I knew she was QAnon believer, but I didn't know that she had specifically talked about how Hillary Clinton was apparently caught on video murdering a child in a satanic ritual. I mean, again, this is like this was like the this is early QAnon stuff. This is really early QAnon stuff. Like, this is about being around when, like, Pizzagate was transitioning to QAnon. And then here's another one that Media Matters pulled up. Great work again from Media Matters. Apparently, a nefarious entity, including the Rothschilds, used a space laser to start a deadly fire in California in 2018. Now this one that goes back further than even QAnon. This sort of stuff, the HAARP machine, where Obama controls the weather. And then obviously, the Jews run the world with the Rothschild reference. And I saw it was trending, Jewish space laser, earlier. Like, this is like old school anti-Semitic conspiracy theories right here. Incredible. I mean, I'm a little bit shocked, and I guess that's why I haven't really been paying attention too much to this recent Marjorie Taylor Greene news cycle, because I knew who she was. We were talking about her on this show months and months and months ago, over the I think before this, I don't remember when we first started talking about it. Like over the summer, I think I did an episode on the QAnon believers running for. I did an episode, a legit episode, completely about the QAnon believers running for Congress. And I did an episode talking about her, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Lauren Boebert. I mean, they're both far-right extremists. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a little bit more in that world than Boebert. I mean, they both are, but, Marjorie Taylor Greene is deep in it. Like, Lauren Boebert is like a Louis Gohmert. Or Sarah Palin. Marjorie Taylor Greene is like your weird, completely out of touch high school acquaintance who never paid attention to anything at all in current events or politics, who now all of a sudden spends their days sharing conspiracy theories on Facebook. That's what Marjorie Taylor Greene is the equivalent of there. Adam Baum points out Alex Jones old school, Mark Dice level. Yeah, like this is like Alex Jones Rothschild, right? He always talks about the Roth. This isn't like, these aren't conspiracy theories that show up on your former college roommate's profile on Facebook when they were bored during COVID. This is like, you've been watching InfoWars for years, conspiracy theories. This isn't don't wear a mask because actually studies that don't exist show that they're worse for your health than if you wore one. This is I've been purchasing Super Male Vitality from the InfoWars store for the past 10 years and been drinking it religiously every single day level. I think I'm going to have to do an episode, actually, going back and pulling up some of these conspiracy theories. Because I guess that's the thing, too. I'm not really, like, again, Media Matters. I didn't know Marjorie Taylor Greene was a proponent of some of these specific conspiracy theories. But even finding that out, it just isn't hitting me, I guess, like it is other people. Because I know. It's welcome to what I've known. Everybody who's surprised by that. I mean, I feel like the Media Matters people have to be feeling the same way, because they've been. I'm pretty sure actually that the episode I did on the QAnon people with Congress was with a Media Matters researcher. Like, if you've been in the trenches of this stuff, like they've been, and like I've been, and like, obviously, so many people have been on the show. Jared Holt, Mike from Hate Watch, Kelly Wow, Will Summer, um, Talia. Who else? I'm trying to think. I'm having like a mental block right now. And people I have on my list to get on this show too, who haven't been on yet, whose work I constantly follow. This is like, I don't know. It's just like, I'm not desensitized to it, but I'm also just not surprised. I mean, I am desensitized to it. I'm trying to play it off as if my brain isn't mush from this. But no, I mean, sadly, I think it just doesn't surprise me anymore. Oj says, is Marjorie a cynical follower or a true believer? She's a total true believer. Oh, Kurt says that. Kurt, jinx, Kurt. I didn't even see that. That just popped up on my screen just after I said it. Kurt says, total true believer. She is a true believer. There's no turning someone like that around. She is deep. I mean, let me pull up her statement that she put out. All these conspiracy theories of her harassing students who survived school shootings, and peddling anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and she tweets out how she is going to put out a statement, a very important statement. And I was under no, maybe some people thought, oh, maybe she was going to apologize or try to spin it. I was under no assumption she was going to do any of that. She says, here's her statement. I want to read it for you guys. I mean, it's off the walls, batshit crazy, but also completely expected. The statement reads, here's the title: A Message to the Mob from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Here's my message to the radical left-wing Democrat mob and the fake news media trying to take me out. Since launching your smear campaign attacks on me, which I should mention, the smear campaign attacks on her are literally just finding old videos of her and just re-uploading them so that they have a recent timestamp and aren't hidden behind a library of more recent videos. Since launching your smear campaign attacks on me, nearly 60,000 America First patriots from all 50 states have reached out with messages of support and have poured over $1.6 million in small donations into my campaign account. Every attack, every lie, every smear strengthens my base of support at home and across the country because people know the truth and are fed up with the lies. Again, the lies being her words verbatim reposted. You can actually visually see her. These aren't even just like radio interviews or something, which to me would mean the same. But for people who want to argue that it's an imposter, literally video evidence of her on camera. Some of these clips, literally her talking, her filming it like selfie style, talking to the camera, like eyes like this, looking directly at the viewer, saying this stuff. But anyway. While big PACs and powerful corporations refuse to donate to Republicans and cave to the vicious cancel culture mob, the people have my back. The same 75 million people who voted for President Trump. Voters who will be vital to Republicans taking back the House in 2022. Taking back the House? That makes it seem like they recently had the House. Contributions of 50 cents or 100 are significant statements of support, but the heartfelt prayers and encouraging messages telling me to keep standing strong against the mob are what's most significant to me. Yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to keep going on here, but that's, I mean, the reason I even read as much as I did is because she's a true believer. This isn't someone sharing conspiracy theories online because they're looking for validation or looking to spark a conversation so they can try to make sense of things. This is someone who fully, wholly believes what she's saying. And when she's called out for some of these old beliefs, she just pretends she never said it. because she knows what she said. There's no introspection. She's deep into this stuff. True believer. This is not someone. This is not someone you reach out to in hopes of uniting with. Just to be clear. I would have Marjorie Taylor Greene on this show. Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you're listening, I would be happy to have you on this program. And you could set the record straight. You could let me know that it wasn't the Jewish laser machines, right? What was it? Jewish laser beams. It was just the, the Hollywood elite laser beams. The, yeah. MW says, Matt, who do you think the Q drops can be traced to aside from the Watkins? Do you have any speculations about that? Listen, there's a lot of things connecting the Watkins to it, but I have always been hesitant to declare like some other people who feel comfortable declaring. It's not enough direct evidence yet, although it's very clear they have something to do with it. But as to who would be behind it, excuse me, it's been a long week. Actually, it's been a long month. Oh wait, we got a call. Let's take this phone call here. We have a caller on the line. 1 second, let me pull you up. Ooh, there's some weird humming in the background, like a background noise.
Oh, it does that.
Okay. Who is this? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm Zoe from Montreal.
Hey, Zoe. How you doing? Always a pleasure when you call in.
Yeah, I'm all right.
Quick favor. Can you just speak up a little bit louder into your mic? Because with that little hum in the background, it's a little bit too low. You need to just speak up a little bit.
Is this all right?
It's a little bit better. If you could get a little bit up closer to that mic though, because it still sounds like you're a little bit far from it.
Like this?
Yeah, that's better. What would you like to talk about today, Zoe?
So I'm sure you're familiar with the Epoch Times.
I am very familiar.
Have you ever received a paper edition in your mail?
I have not received the paper edition in my mail. However, as you probably know, as I've mentioned it many times, I had Moumita on, and it should have been earlier in the show, and it should be obvious to people who are just tuning in for the first time. I am born, bred, always lived in Queens, and that's where I am to this day. And Epoch Times has a very strong on-the-ground presence in Queens. And I passed by those newspaper boxes where you like insert a quarter or 50 cents or whatever and get an issue of Epoch Times. I passed by multiple ones of those on a regular basis. So I am very familiar with the physical paper edition of Epoch Times too.
Okay. Because I did receive one in the mail.
Now that's interesting.
On Tuesday, a lot of residents in the province of Quebec found in their mail a rare French-Canadian special edition of the Epoch Times, because they paid to have them mailed to basically almost everyone. Like, even in small towns, they received.
Wow. Do you know how they got your mailing address? How they knew or how they decided to send it to you?
I don't know that they targeted specifically. I think they just said give it to every door.
It didn't have a mailing. Like it was dropped off physically by someone. It wasn't
Yes.
something put in the mail. Okay, that makes
But
sense then. Okay, I thought you were saying you received it with like a mailing address label, like they mailed it to your house, like the Epoch Times.
No, but it was distributed by Canada Post, which is our USPS.
Now, they made a special French Canadian edition.
Yeah, normally they don't print it in French. In Canada.
Oh, it was in French.
Well, in France it's in French.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, but your edition was.
Well, basically, it's a translated version from the Canadian edition.
Oh, okay, got it. Now,
That's
what were they pushing on the front page there? Like, what was the? I mean, I'm going to assume that the top story on there is really what they want. We're putting the money behind to put all these in the mail, to send out this special French Canadian edition.
Yeah, actually, I have it with me, so I can tell you.
Oh, cool. Let's hear that Let's hear that headline.
So it reads, "Communist China's silent war against the West." Is that good?
Right.
And this,
now, for people who aren't familiar, Epoch Times is run by a I don't know how exactly to describe them. Like they're like a religious sect or cult, right?
Falun Gong.
Falun Gong, right? And they obviously are no fans of the Chinese government, and obviously lots to criticize the Chinese government for, but these guys do it while basically uniting with the right wing and Donald Trump.
Yeah, the subheader reads, because it's good. For decades, the CCP have been using the war without limit to weaken the allied Western nations' interior, including Canada. It's, I mean, of course, every article.
Look, continue. I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
Every article is about China and how it's influencing Canada, but also a lot is not about Canada, and it feels like it's just like the American articles, but they just add "and also affects Canada" to it. So, yeah, it's quite fascinating. There's also a fun little chart that exposes all the Chinese within the global institutions. So, apparently.
Now, I've actually been meaning, I have, as I mentioned many times on this show, I have a list of, guests I want to reach out to, and topics for shows, and I actually have been planning on doing an Epoch Times episode for quite a while. Just haven't gotten around to it because so much has been happening. But I think I need to get around to that, because it's clear that they were a major force in certain communities during the Trump era, and obviously they're not going away, and they're going to be a major force. I mean, they were one of the biggest. They run some of the biggest right-wing channels in this country, in the U.S., like the biggest U.S. right-wing channels on Facebook and on YouTube are run by the Epoch Times.
Yeah, no, they're, and also looking into it, it's not the first time this happened in Canada. In the rest of Canada, it's also happened, and it's always through Canada Post, and the union was strongly against it, but I don't know, the institution itself was totally fine with it, and there were even Post people who got fired because they refused to deliver the newspaper.
Right.
So it's
I'll tell you this. I have a personal experience with Epoch Times. I live in Queens again, and there is a big Chinese New Year parade. Obviously, it's not going to happen this year because of COVID. But every year there's a big Chinese New Year celebration in Flushing, Queens, because there's a very big Chinese population in Flushing, Queens. And the Epoch Times has a huge presence in that parade. Like multiple floats, probably, oh boy, I don't even know, a lot. Like I want to say like 100 people in this parade marching and going up to the crowd and giving them little Epoch Times trinkets and like goodie bags and things like that. And they have a huge presence here, and it's it's and also if you're familiar, you probably have seen Falun Gong propaganda, honestly, without ever realizing it. There's that dance group. Oh my God, I'm having a mental block right now.
Wait a minute.
I can't remember it right
Shen
now.
Yun.
Shen Yun, thank you. You've probably seen their billboards. It's a live show that showcases what appears to be like traditional Chinese sort of theatrical performances, like dance performances, and they tour the country, and they always have billboards everywhere. There's always commercials, radio advertisements, and they have a direct connection to Epoch Times because they're run by this same group, Falun Gong.
And Epoch Times also even had the offices in Montreal's Chinatown. So they're also interested in our community.
What was that? I missed that part right there.
The Epoch Times had offices in Montreal's Chinatown.
They have offices a lot of places. I wonder how many of them are actual offices. I wonder how many of them are just rent the mailbox office, like rent and address things, because I've come across them having so many different addresses.
Yeah.
But thanks, Zoe. Thank you for calling in with this, because now I really want to have to do that Epoch Times episode. So I'm gonna push that up on my list. I appreciate the call.
And I'm the owner of 2 Epoch Times newspaper.
Well, you could hang them up on your wall as like a I don't know. You could put them up on your wall as like an ode to right-wing propaganda.
Yes, I'll put it somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for the call, Zoe. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks.
There was someone trying to call in when I was on the line with Zoe. You should feel free to call in now. Let me message you. Hey, feel free to call back in now. And we'll take that call if they are. Here we go. Hi, what's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm John. I'm calling from Peoria.
Hi, John. Thanks for calling in. What would you like to talk about today?
Well, first, I'm a fan of yours through MR and Michael Brooks. But I wanted to...
Thank you. Great to hear.
Sure. I thought interaction that I had with Magnus Penvidia might be of interest to you.
Oh yeah, because
recently on Twitter.
I saw he's on Twitter. He has a new Twitter name, which I'm not telling anyone to go do this because I honestly don't think it's but I'm surprised it hasn't been caught yet because a lot of these platforms have literally outright banned Boogaloos. Because But what did he say when you interacted with him? What was the interaction all about, actually?
So yeah, it was basically someone had responded. Some other Twitterson had responded to a comment about your video. I think it was actually your response to you, a reply to you, and I had replied to him that just because someone has a gay flag doesn't mean that they're supporting it. I mean, people can do all sorts of things, and so
not just that, you could actually even be LGBT and,
right,
and
yeah.
be a
I mean, you could
fash.
legitimately
Right.
be that, and yeah, absolutely. But my point is, that's not necessarily core to who these people's beliefs are, right?
Right.
So, and then I pointed out your video, your piece that recent piece that you did, and I don't know if Magnus is like doing a search on his name because I didn't tag him on the Twitter. Now I'm a boomer, so I'm not the best at Twitter. But he joined in the conversation and then said that, because I had what was it? He said, well, stay in your bubble, basically. He made a comment and said, stay in your bubble, basically poo-pooing what I had said. And then what I thought was, and that's kind of like, a typical response, I think, on social media when people don't want to address issues. And then he had stated that he had, so in the recent appearance on InfoWars, he stated that he had defended Antifa. So I don't know if you've seen that video.
I actually did not get a chance to watch that yet. I do know that Alex Jones had on a boogaloo before, like the day before he had on Magnus, he had another boogaloo on.
Oh, really? And he apparently got an argument with him. I don't watch.
Yes, and I didn't get a chance to watch that yet. But from the reviews I saw, that boogaloo actually, had an argument with Alex Jones over Antifa, and this guy was defending Antifa. Now, here's the thing: I do think there are boogaloos who have these legit, and not to detract from, to change what you were saying, and I want to get back to your point in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there are, like in every movement, there are boogaloos who probably legitimately have a soft spot or have friends or see some positives with Antifa and would defend them. And obviously, because not everyone's overall ideologies are so black and white, there's some gray area. But if you feel that way, then you need to understand that the boogaloo movement cannot be what you are. Like that's the thing. It would not, just like there's white supremacists who start questioning, wow, is this really who I am, or is it really the fault of immigrants and Jewish people and black people? Like they start to question, and then they realize, no, I'm not that, and they come away from that, and they're no longer who they once were. Like I'm sure there are boogaloos out there who are confused as to this. They support Antifa, but they think they should be in the boogaloo movement. My hope is that those people find out that that's not the movement for them, if that's truly who they are, a Antifa, anti-fascist, Black Lives Matter supporter, who actually supports these left-wing movements. Boogaloo movement's not for you if that's who you are. You're in the wrong movement.
Right. And to your point, I think, I hate guilt by association, but at the same time, if you're in a group and the whole group is saying one thing that is disgusting, you got to kind of think about the company that you keep. Right. You should, a little self-reflection goes a long way.
It's like starting to it's like it literally is like taking back something like you can't come out and be like, listen, I don't like, Nazis got a bad rap, and I want to, and I'm gonna redefine the word Nazi. No, like it was, Nazis were who they were, and they started that way. And there's no, like, Boogaloo started as a movement that wanted a race war and they call it a civil war, but the very base of the core of it, they want a race war. Do all boogaloos today specifically want a race war? No, I'm sure some of them don't. I'm sure some of them are just waiting for this generic civil war, which, by the way, a civil war always has the undertones, at the very least, of it being a race war, even though they might not realize that, those more open-minded boogaloos. No, like, what was the Civil War? The Civil War wasn't just American versus American. No, it was literally Americans who wanted slavery versus Americans who did not. I mean, that's the core of it. Like, I don't know what else to. There's no more arguing that. Like, it just, to me, the most obvious thing, and this is where and listen, if Magnus is one of those people who's confused and truly is an anti-fascist, and he could have changed too. I know I called him out in a lot of his posts from a couple months ago. Perhaps over the past few months he's changed. Listen, I always talk about the point of talking about right-wing movements is the hope of learning as much as you can about them to possibly find out how this goes on, how they reach out to people, how people fall deep into this stuff, and in hopes of pulling people out. I'm all for people getting a second chance if they truly want that. Again, they have to make that initiative. They can't be forced. You can't force them to do that. And if he's one of those people, then that's great. But he's not out there doing that. He's not out there saying, "Listen, I'm a boogaloo and I want to learn more about the left." Or he's out there going, "You should love the boogaloos. This is why the boogaloos are great. The boogaloos are just like you. The boogaloos should be your friends. Unite with the boogaloos." That is not what that is. And to me, the Duncan Lemp thing is really shows you why they reach out to the left. Like, if you were a true ally and you supported Black Lives Matter, you would show up there and you would be shouting Breonna Taylor's name, and that's it. And the other names that Black Lives Matter supporters, want to put a spotlight on. But for this example, because he always brings up Breonna Taylor and Duncan Lemp in the same sentence. Yeah, I mean, he's done it multiple times, as I showed in the video.
Yeah, he's trying to equate them.
Yes. If he was a Black Lives Matter supporter, he would show up and not try to make it about his own movement. Because by inserting Duncan Lemp's name, a white guy with far-right militia ties who, honestly, I mean, I get if you're just someone who is anti-police and wants to just say everyone killed by the police is in the same boat. I mean, sure, I guess that's a really broad brush to paint with, but they're not the equivalent case at all. Breonna Taylor was murdered by police because they went to the wrong house. The person they were after did not live with Breonna Taylor. They had outdated, wrong information, showed up and killed this unarmed black woman. And I'm not saying this to say that, automatically Duncan Lemp deserved to die. No. And, that's not what I'm saying. Again, we don't. Mm-hmm. If you're familiar with Duncan Lemp's case, and I don't want to go too much into that because honestly, it is really murky, and obviously the police are being sketchy in Duncan Lemp's case. From what I've heard, though, he was armed, and he did have a booby trap that needed to be set up for police if they showed up, that needed to be detonated in his home. Again, though, I don't know all the details as to what led up to his death. I've heard that he died without any confrontation with the police. They showed up and just shot and killed him. And I've also heard that they showed up and he engaged with them with gunfire. I don't know. I don't want to get into that. I don't trust the police on that, so don't think I'm siding with the police. I think the police are not trustworthy. I also think the boogaloos were pushing that their side of the story are untrustworthy. So I don't know what happened that night with that killing. But I do know that they showed up to his house because they had seen they had received the tip where he was posting on social media, firearms that he was not supposed to own. And they got a warrant to go to his house and approach him about this and find out what he had. Not the same as Breonna Taylor at all. I'm sorry. It's just not beyond the fact that she's a black woman who was murdered by police, who are systematically seem to have an issue with somehow always killing unarmed black people in this country. And then we have an armed militia guy who is not the same as her. I'm sorry. that's where it should be as clear as day why they are talking about Black Lives Matters, because they want to shoehorn their own agenda into the BLM movement.
Right. So just getting back to this.
Oh, right. Sorry for going on that tangent there.
Oh, no. I mean, I think I understand. So on Infowars, I can't even remember his name because he's just so inconsequential. Sorry?
Magnus?
No, Magnus. I mean, Magnus.
Alex Jones?
Anyway, was saying on the show that.
Oh, you're talking about Alex Jones is co-host.
Jones. Jesus Christ, I can't even.
Oh no, I thought you were talking about maybe his co-host, and that's why the Owen, whatever his name is. Right.
So he was telling Alex Jones that he claimed in the tweet to me that he was defending Antifa to Alex Jones, and if you look at that video, Alex Jones is just throwing softball questions at him, just like Jimmy Dore did. I mean, both of these guys from different angles are throwing softball questions at Magnus, and was asking about Antifa, and Magnus was saying, oh, well, the Antifa is just has as, against the issues with law enforcement and blah, 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 trying to show the similarities between them. And then he made the statement on there that, we have that the coalition as it is. I mean, what coalition? What coalition between two, very, groups is, I think, a charitable definition to give each of these, because it's very amorphous in a way. I mean, the people say they're Antifa and you take them at their word for it. People say they're Boogaloo Boys and you take them at their word for it. So I don't know what he means by coalition, other than in the field, they might make arrangements. But but back to my point, I guess, is I'm sorry to veer off there, but the discussion with Alex Jones was just the interview, was just more softball questions. And if one wonders, I mean, I guess that's a subjective view of mine, but you can just look at the comments.
Did you watch the whole interview?
Oh yeah.
Now I have a question, because I didn't see the video yet. I'm gonna watch it. I'm probably gonna talk about it the next episode. But I did see some comments about it, and I saw that Alex Jones brought up his usual conspiracy theories, and that he didn't push back against any of this stuff. Like Magnus didn't speak. Like Magnus may have said that he was a supporter of Antifa, but when Alex Jones would say something against these movements that he apparently supports, he did not push back.
I think that's a subjective kind of view. I would agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with your assessment that you have heard from other people.
Right. I have to again, a full addendum. I need to watch it myself. I'm just repeating what I seen already.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, I would agree with that kind of analysis, that he really didn't push back. If he pushed back, it was not a lot. It was just there are people in Antifa that get along with the Boogaloo Boys, that have this what was he calling it? Some arrangement, but.
The funny thing there is too is, like, obviously if you're on the ground at a protest, and one of the of the dozens of movements on the floor, if one of them is going to be your ally on the ground right there and there's shit going down, I mean, of course you're going to take it in the moment. You know what I mean? Like, right. I don't get these people, like, there's leftists out there who are going like, oh, I've seen videos of Boogaloo Boys standing alongside Black Lives Matter protesters at various different rallies. Well, yeah, if you're on the ground and you got police on one side and other far right-wing movements on the other, and there's one movement who's down there, the Boogaloo Boys, and they're saying, oh yeah, we'll stand with you. I mean, you'll take it while you're there in that moment. I mean, that's not of course. I mean,
right. And I used to do more protests maybe about 8-10 years ago than I do now. And I used to, one of my jobs at the time was taking care of at-risk youth. And the group I was with, that we would take them to protests, and we had so-called people on our same side who wanted to instigate. These were not nonviolent protests, by the way. We had people there that would want to instigate trouble and would pull these minors from my control, and try to get them physically to get them to engage in police or in counter protests. And so my point is, you don't know who you're really dealing with. If you don't know them, you don't know who you're dealing with. So yeah, sometimes you have to if people are kind of on your side, you kind of trust them, but at the same time you realize that they might not be. So
Right.
Anyway, the thing that I wanted to point. Oh, so then so that was, I think, a description of this hard-hitting journalism of Alex Jones, and but I had brought up the point to Magnus when he had said, "Well, I defended I defended Antifa on Alex Jones." I said, "Was that after you said you'd wipe your butt with their flag?"
Right.
And he responded with words to the effect, "You're so yes, because I in a video I wiped my ass," which I don't believe I've never seen, but I guess there must be one out there. Yes, because in a video I wiped my ass with Antifa flag, I'm a neo-Nazi. And then he said that I had, what was it, clown logic. And I thought that's an interesting comment because, and it took a second. I'm like, he didn't watch it. He didn't watch the video because that wasn't the argument you were making.
Right.
And
I don't think he's a. I mean, I know there's a lot of people like to just use all these words to interchangeably, but I don't think he's a neo-Nazi. I think he is a proponent of white supremacy.
right.
I would have to know more about him if I would,
say he was a neo-Nazi.
To say he was a neo-Nazi. He certainly likes to push his white martyrs. I mean, he specifically, I didn't bring this in the video because he didn't specifically bring it up. And I wanted to make the video short and concise.
Right.
And he brought up Duncan Lemp, so I thought Duncan Lemp was the one to go with. But another martyr for these guys is Lavoy Finicum. I'm sure I'm not getting his name exactly right. Lavoy Finicum, I think, was his name, though. Do you guys remember when the Bundys, the farmers, the Bundys,
Sure.
they
occupied
that Land of Bureau Management governmental building,
right.
and then they were finally driven from the building, and they had a shootout with the feds?
Yeah, he was the one that had the shootout. He's the main instigator in that.
Yeah, they also view him as a martyr.
Yeah.
Now this is a dude who it's not at all it's not at all a gray area like with Duncan Lemp in terms of what went on that night. There's video that, first of all, he with armed broke into a government facility and occupied it.
Right.
And then made it clear that he was ready to fight to the death with his own words.
There's videos of him telling that he was going to fight.
Yes.
He was going to have a shootout.
And when the feds approached him, he had a gun and was approaching them from behind. This is not someone who, and again, I would have loved for them to have apprehended him and for him not to have lost his life, because I'm not a proponent of the state taking anyone's life. But in this scenario, this is not this is not someone to make your martyr. I'm sorry, unless you are out to specifically condone that sort of behavior.
Yeah. No. So I guess with my clown logic that I realized that he didn't watch your video. I went back and looked at some of the tweets that were related, and sure enough, he said that he had stopped. So the other guy in the Twitter conversation, let me just say, the other guy said he stopped because you had mentioned Milo Yiannopoulos and the log cabin Republicans, and he had stopped at that a point in the video, because I don't know, and so he was defending Magnus while not watching the whole video, which I thought was interesting. But Magnus admitted in that same thread that he had not watched your whole video. After apparently that you had said words to the effect that the Boogaloo Boys were kind of formed because of their disappointment in the Republican loss. And I'm thinking, when did Matt say that? He never. I don't know if this guy's just making stuff up or if he's confused or what.
I'm sorry. What did he say? So you cut out for a moment in my headphones.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So he stated words to the effect that he stopped watching the video when you had said that there were the Boogaloo Boys were formed from the disappointment of Republican loss. I mean,
what?
I can send you the tweet or whatever, but
I never even said that in the video.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if he's confused, if he just lies.
I mean, the Boogaloo Boys are. I mean, I know you know, but to answer that person who you're bringing up, the Boogaloo Boys literally came out from a meme that literally used that movie, Break Into Electric Boogaloo, to reference a second Civil War II Electric Boogaloo. And that's what
it is a really bad movie, by the way.
I haven't seen it, honestly.
It's pretty bad.
But I mean, you can't take that away from that. It's part of what the Boogaloo Boy movement is, because that's why it was started. They wanted it's just like, listen, and like here's the thing too. Like I was thinking about this the other day, like after the video. There are when like the skinhead movement had, there are racist skinheads and there are not anti-racist skinheads, but there was a specific like outcry in the skinhead movement, particularly against those racists. So much so that there is an actual skinhead movement, Sharp, that actually is dedicated to anti-racism and getting racists out of the skinhead movement. Like it is like an example of like how, yes, a movement could be co-opted by nefarious people, but it's the onus on the good people in that movement to fix that. Right. And if the Boogaloos are not analogous, obviously, because the Boogaloos started out again as wanting civil war, but even in that scenario I brought up, like, where are these, just showing up at a Black Lives Matter rally and getting into arguments with Black Lives Matter protests because you are there with guns, while assuring them that you really support them, that's not at all policing your movement. I'm sorry.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I, like I say, the reason I bring that up is that he made this statement of that you never said in your video. So I don't know. I have to believe that this is symptomatic of his approach. If people don't check out or don't know or just he'll pull stuff out that is at best disingenuous. I don't know. But I think is, in my opinion, outright lie. When he says like, well, you were, you said something in the video that you never said. But anyway, that was my little kerfuffle with him on Twitter.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, as straightforward as I put, there's a lot of stupid people out there.
Oh, well, I will say one last thing, which is funny, because the other guy was trying to encourage Magnus to get on when you host on Thursday, the majority part. And I thought, I don't know, with this guy's approach of saying nonsense. Well, let me rephrase that. with this guy's approach with this guy's history of going on interviews with where hosts post softball questions for him, I kind of wonder, like, well, what would happen if someone really pushed back? But at the same time, I don't know if anyone wants to platform someone who says that they said something in a video that they never did.
Right. You know what? Someone in the I don't know if this person is asking if I did that or it looks like they're referencing what you brought up. Chris in the YouTube live chat says, "Is he linking?" Oh, the chat just moved. 1 second. Is he linking is he linking the idea of losing to Obama in 2012 to forming the Boogaloos? Now it makes sense, I think, because I bring up in the video that the Boogaloo meme, the first time it's used that could be found in the 4chan archives, is in 2012, specifically referencing if there will be a civil war due to Obama's 2012 reelection.
Right.
And
but that doesn't mean that you're saying that it was born out of a Republican loss.
Right. I think that's what they think I'm saying, though, because they're not very smart. No, what I mean there, and what they mean, obviously, in that video, in that mention on 4chan, is that the Boogaloos literally look at any sort of major moment that's happening and see in which way could this be the jump off for Civil War #2? Like, that's what they want. They're not saying they're bringing it out of they formed out of Republican loss. They're saying, ooh, can we weaponize this to get what we want? Like, can we get enough white racists really angry that Obama got reelected so we could get our civil war? Like, they don't give a shit about Obama or Romney, or they don't give a shit about like, this is for, like, I don't They
don't give a shit about the Republican.
Yes,
obviously they don't give a shit about the law.
So I will say this: there is a cohort that did like Trump. I don't know why this guy tried to pretend they didn't. Literally standing with him at that event where he had that speech was a Boogaloo wearing a Trump hat. So there are Boogaloos who support Trump. But again, Trump is not analogous to Republicans either in terms of in terms of supporters, even though he's analogous to Republicans as to wanting exactly what they want. But it is like, I never was under the I don't believe I ever gave the impression that the Boogaloos were Republicans who were upset about an electoral loss,
or Republican supporters, and I never got that from that video. I will bring up a couple other points. Is first off, he kind of on InfoWars was saying that that it's not that they want a revolution or civil war. Excuse me. It's not that they want a civil war. It's that we're already in a civil war.
Right. They think that. Right. Right.
Right. Yeah. And I think I guess I have an issue with this because my mother's parents, my grandfather, he lost like 7 male siblings in the Mexican Civil War, so and then my father was Cuban, and he came out of, he saw political killings under Batista. People that think this way, that there's not real people that get involved in a civil war, that you're only having a civil war against the government, are kind of bonkers, in my opinion. They don't know, they have no knowledge of history or don't care to. And I don't know. I don't think there's really too much you can argue with them at that point, because they're speaking from a position that is pretty much purely ignorant, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. No. Here's the thing, too, though. Like, they really think that the left, like the anti-establishment, even like the anarchist left, are the same type of anti-government proponents that they are. Right. Like, no, like, even leftist anarchists realize that the government when it's serving at its best really does help people on the brink. And what they advocate for is for a system that helps them without having the police state, and like they're not advocating for like an a all out anarchist libertarian paradise where like the free market gets to decide and small businesses are like basically doing whatever they want without regulation. Like that's not the utopia that like leftist anarchists are talking about. But they don't either they don't get that, they actually don't get that, or they're pretending they don't get that. Like I don't like no, like every single person on the left, whether you're an anarchist or a socialist or a communist or just or a liberal even or a progressive, wants some sort of system in place that that takes from those who are very fortunate in order to make sure that there's a quality of life standard for those who aren't as fortunate. Like that's not what they advocate for. They just are sick of like they're sick of like some regulation that makes sure their customers don't die of a badly cooked hamburger, like stepping on their small restaurant's neck or some shit like that. Like that's really what they're talking about. Like that's their version of Big Brother. That's their police state. That there's a regulation that protects their customers that they have to follow. Like that's what they hate.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
it's they're if these guys are legit, and when I say these guys, I'm talking about individuals. Then by all means, come to the table, talk to them, and see how you can push them to their. You don't have to give them a platform on your show to do that, though. You could talk to them just via a one-on-one chat. And if you do want to have them on your show, you can make sure you push them on these things and make sure that at the end of the point isn't to push people towards them, it's to push them towards you. That's my real issue with the Jimmy's interview. Like it's just him. It's just him fawning over the guy. Like that's like the message you're sending is that he is good and the Boogaloos are good. That's not like that. Like you should like. If that was a good interview, then Jimmy would have had that guy fawning over his positions. Mr. Forced to Vote wasn't even fucking selling this guy on Medicare for All. Can you believe it? Like it's shocking to me how like just the purpose of that interview was to just like literally for Jimmy to like the cartoon wolf, like when he sees like a hot woman walking by in like a Looney Tunes cartoon, like that Boogaloo came on Jimmy's show, and Jimmy's jaw dropped to the floor, his tongue rolled out, and he went awooga. Like literally, that's what happened.
Exactly, and the thing is, not related to what I called you up about, but just comes to mind. Another good point I think that Tim Black on his show mentioned is, which a lot of other people aren't talking about, is you're going, even from a cynical point of view, you're going to make an alliance with people that are known to be racist in general, and abandon blacks or minorities, because that's what's going to happen. And I think it's kind of a sad comment when Jimmy proposes this kind of thing.
Right. And honestly, like I don't know if and I'm sure people will be arguing in the chat over this or thinking I'm being too nice even or whatever. But honestly, I don't know. And I don't think one is worse than the other. I think both are dangerous in different ways. I don't know what he thought the purpose of that was. And maybe that even makes it even worse that this is a guy who does this professionally and didn't really know what he was doing. Like I'm not sold on the fact that he did that purposefully. Mm-hmm. I'm not sold on the fact that he did that with the intent to sell the Boogaloos. I honestly think he does that bad of a job that he could have just fallen. Like it would not put it past him. My view of him, honestly, that he walked into that without even understanding what he was walking into. And again, I don't know what's worse. I mean,
yeah. Which is worse, that he knowingly did this or that he's so incompetent that he did it?
Right. And if any of those guys want to reach out to me, I'm down. If Jimmy Dore wants to have me on his show, or I'm not expecting it because I know he doesn't. I've heard he doesn't do that. Or if one of these boogaloos wanted to reach out to me again, because I'm not worried about fucking it up because I know who these guys are and I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like I've had very many people on this show who I disagree with, and I am confident that no one has walked away listening to those saying, "Oh man, I love those guys now." You know?
Well, thank you, Matt. I mean, there's really nothing more I wanted to mention, but
no,
I really appreciate you taking my call.
Thank you for the call, because I honestly really wanted to bring that up in this episode, that InfoWars interview. I just didn't get a chance to watch it, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it with someone who did see
All right.
it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's I would just, like I say, I think it's just a kind of a similar interview on in the tone of that Door had, in that it was not very challenging. And It's kind of funny because it's not very challenging to the right, you know, like he didn't, neither of them really pushed back. They were all, you know, kid gloves with each other.
Right. I'm actually more interested in hearing that interview with the guy who came on before
the
Magnus.
previous guy. Yeah, I probably should go look at that one too, because that would probably be interesting.
Yeah, and then if that guy actually did press Alex Jones, for you leftists out there obsessed with uniting with the right, this might be a guy that not unite with him while he's on the right, but this could be a guy that you can possibly win over and unite with him when he comes over to the left. You know, like that's the opportunity there. People who are confused as to what movement they want to be on, because if you actually are an Antifa supporter, a Black Lives Matter supporter, but you also are a gun rights person, listen, there's leftist movements that support guns rights. You don't have to be a right winger, and if that's the one reason why you feel like you have to be a boogaloo boy, then maybe you need your eyes open to some of the gun rights advocates on the left. They exist.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll make a confession that I do own firearms. I was a law enforcement, in law enforcement in the 80s, but I certainly have never taken. I don't have a CCW because I've never felt the need for it, and I would certainly never take it to a protest because it's just too chaotic.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's the thing. Like, I've said this, maybe you've heard me say it before too, and that's why you're bringing this up. But I even if you are a gun rights person and you want your firearm and you're one of those type, like I'm the open carry, I want it, I can't think of a worse place to have a firearm than at a protest. It is literally the worst place. You are begging for innocent lives to be taken. Like, I mean, that's why you would bring it, because you want that to happen. There is no situation more chaotic than the atmosphere down at a protest. You are not going to protect anybody by having a gun at a protest. You are only going to kill someone accidentally by bringing and when I say accidentally, I mean if something did go down at a protest, if you were to open fire on someone who started shit, you're no doubt taking some innocent lives along with that person, if you even get that original person to begin with.
Right.
It's like the worst possible place for firearms. And who else has a firearm at these protests? The cops. So by bringing a firearm, are you saying that you are ready to?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, are you ready to go to war with the cops at a Black Lives Matter protest? Because you know who's going to die at those Black Lives Matter protests, right? People of color who are protesting the death of unarmed black people. You are going to get more unarmed black people and brown people killed.
Yep. All right, Matt. Thank you very much.
Have a great night. Thanks so much for the call.
Bye, Matt.
That was a great call. Great call. And once again, excuse me. Once again, we are going way over with the Patreon show. So we're going to wrap it up in a second. Let's get to some more messages here. Let's go to what do we got here? James Rodriguez. Fuck you, Matt. We almost died here in ATX because of a Nazi white supremacist who killed Garrett Foster. Who's Garrett Foster again? He was the guy who went down there with his girlfriend, right? The armed guy who right. Garrett Foster in Austin. He was killed by a man, Daniel Perry. Right. And Garrett Foster was armed, right? He had his gun, right? And what did that do? If he started opening fire too, who else would have died? How many more deaths would there have been? Garrett Foster should not have been killed. But what good it did if no one had firearms in that protest, Daniel Perry would have stuck out like a sore thumb. And without a doubt, Perry will use the gun as a self-defense claim. If there were no guns down there that day, either Perry would have stuck out and would be going to jail because there'd be clearly no self-defense claim and no argument there. I mean, maybe he still will go to jail, but there'd be no question about it. There should not be guns at protests. James says, "Watch your words, bud." What am I saying? Is that a threat? Garrett Foster went down there to support the Black Lives Matter movement with his fiance, who is black, and he was killed by a right winger. What does that have to do with the guns? That's not even a case that you could even bring up in this scenario, if you ask me. But also, if no one had a gun there, then the one person who would have brought the gun was Daniel Perry. And people would have been able to know to stay away from him. But when you have everyone at a protest with guns and it's complete chaos, you don't know what's going to go on. You don't know what's going to happen. Chris says, having a gun in a protest just raises anxiety and stress for everyone else. Yes, that's the point of them bringing the guns down there. That's why Boogaloos bring the guns down there. James says, I'm not threatening you. You're just talking shit saying people shouldn't have guns. If people didn't have guns, then Daniel Perry wouldn't have had a gun to kill Garrett with. If there were no guns down there at that protest, Garrett would be alive. And I know the story you're talking about. I understand that you knew Garrett personally, it seems like, in the comments you said. I remember that story and being heartbroken over it. The photos of him and his fiancée together, and she's in a wheelchair. He was basically her entire life. He helped her with her everything. And because assholes brought, and I'm not talking about him, but because assholes brought a gun down to a protest, he's dead now. And it's a horrible story. It's a horrible thing. If there were no guns down at that protest, then Garrett would be alive. James says people are going to get shot by Nazis regardless if these protests continue. I mean, if there were people with guns down at your protest, then you don't want them there. I mean, just don't have people with guns at your protest. I mean, there are plenty of protests that go on where people don't show up with guns. I don't know why it's become a thing in certain areas in certain movements to bring your guns. Because if protesters don't have guns, then the only people there who have guns are the police. So bringing your gun as a protester, knowing most other protesters don't have a gun, you're basically insinuating you're there to shoot the police. And when the police open fire back on you, they're not going to delineate which protesters to fire on. They will just fire on the protesters in general. James says, what about the cop in Tacoma recently with the squad car? Right. What were they going to do if they were armed? Shoot at the police officer? Like, that's the thing here. Like, you're bringing guns to a protest where there are lots of young people of color. Who do you think is going to take the brunt of the blowback when the cops defend themselves from the protesters who show up with the guns? I mean, they're already high-fiving the white militiamen who show up. Who do you think they're going to shoot if one of those white militiamen turn around and shoot one of them after giving them a high five? I mean, they'll probably shoot the guy who shoots them too, or at least try to. But who else are they going to take their anger out on? I mean, any retaliation against the police is only going to cause you more problems. I mean, if you are down at a protest to literally open fire and have a war with police, if that's your version of civil war, I mean, you know who's going to die, right? You know who is going to be killed. I mean, I don't understand. Like, that's very adjacent to what the Boogaloos want. Like, that's also why they're down those Black Lives Matter protests. You know that, right? Like, those Boogaloos who actually shot and killed police officers, like, after Black Lives Matter protests, or while Black Lives Matter protests were going on. Like, you realize why they do that. That's their race war. Like, they shoot the police officer. The police officers blame the protesters as a whole. And they start killing Black Lives Matter protesters. That's what they want. That's the strategy there. I mean, people are bringing up Rittenhouse in the chat. If no one had a gun down there, two people would be alive right now. And one person wouldn't have had their arm blown off. Gage, the Black Lives Matter protester who had a handgun, he went to pull it out after Rittenhouse shot two Black Lives Matter protesters, and he got his arm blown off for doing so. Like, it's never going to work out fully in your favor if you're also armed. You're only going to get more people killed. It's the same reason we don't want guns in schools in the case of a school shooter. Like, yes, if a school shooter shows up in your cinematic Hollywood scenario, a perfectly skilled and trained, and even that's fantasy, because even perfectly skilled and trained people often kill via friendly fire. But the right argues that we want people armed in schools, so when their school shooter shows up, there's someone to return fire and kill the school shooter. But what's going to happen is you're going to have chaos when someone opens up fire at first in a school, and you will have multiple people with guns running around thinking that the other people looking for the school shooter is the school shooter themselves, and you're going to have a number of people getting killed who aren't the school shooter. There will be more people who die if everyone at these protests are armed. If one person who is the instigator shows up armed, less people will die even in that scenario if no one else is armed. Because it will be quite obvious who to go after, who is the perpetrator, and less people will die. James, I get what you're saying, but I think you're looking at this as a you brought up a Second Amendment. Well, I mean, Second Amendment isn't really. I mean, you realize what the Second Amendment says, right? I mean, it doesn't say you could just roam the streets. I mean, this is again a right-wing talking point where it just means you could walk around with a bazooka or something. I mean, it literally says the word regulated in the Second Amendment, which means the government could place regulations on your firearms, on where you could carry your firearms, on whether you're needing a license to carry a firearm. I'm not even listen, I was a total 100% anti-gun person for a long time. And I personally still am, but I also am sympathetic now to the idea of leftists or people who aren't, or who are left of center, wanting to own a firearm because they see the Nazis getting armed. But in that scenario, I'm thinking, you being harassed by some white supremacists or neo-Nazis coming and knocking on your door, like for example, what the Proud Boys did to Vic Berger. I'm not thinking that you should also walk down at a protest armed with an assault rifle. There is no place. This is a position where I will never move from. There is no worse place for a firearm than at a protest. I mean, look what the police did to that guy in Portland. Michael Reinhardt, the guy who shot Proud Boy after they drove through the streets spraying bear mace in people's faces. Cops showed up and opened fire on him. Eyewitnesses said he was getting out of his car to turn himself over, and they opened fire on him. Like, you will lose. That's not the fight to have. I'm sorry. Like, you're just going to get yourself or other people who are on your side killed. So I think someone brought up Black Panther. Yeah, I do know there are leftist groups who do marches with their guns. But they usually specifically do their own thing with their firearms. And that's their thing. That's fine. I really don't see that many leftist protesters showing up with firearms to general protests. Like a Black Lives Matter protest is open to all. Have they happened? Sure, I'm sure. But it's rare from what I've seen. The leftist protests that have firearms are usually like that specific armed leftist group doing their own march or rally. And that's their thing. They know what they're getting themselves into by showing up with a firearm. They're prepared. I mean, you really want a mass protest with hundreds and thousands of unarmed protesters ranging in age from just children to elderly people, put on the front lines there, ready to be mowed down by a gun in some sort of fire, or in some sort of gun battle. I mean, James says we're a bunch of cowards who like to play voting games. I mean, listen, if it's clear that you are, if you are on the left, it's clear you are like a accelerationist, which is in a position I understand. But just remember who will die when you have that battle. Like those people who you say are living in poverty and without health care, who you want to accelerate for, they will be the pawns that are taken out first. They will be the pawns put on the front lines and be taken out first. In some sort of, they don't have the weapons. They never will have the weapons. I mean, frankly, you will never have the weapons. What, you're gonna take on a police force? Afqua says, also, like a lot of people at BLM are not leftist. They are centrist and liberals there. Center left, I would say. I wouldn't say completely centrist. But yeah, and it's good to have them out there. Listen, I get where you're coming from, man. I understand that sentiment. But I'm telling you to think about who will be hurt. I mean, you've already seen who got hurt at your own Austin, Texas protests. It's not going to end good for the people you say that you care most about. I could not put those people in harm's way. Yeah, I could not. You don't. I get what you're saying, but you don't want to. You don't want to do that. Skulls Null says, honestly, I'd rather have liberals backing leftist movements than other leftists criticize leftist movements for having liberals in them. Absolutely. And here's the thing. I think a lot of the left is terminally online and thinks that there's a mass number of liberals, like all liberals are staunch Democrat defending. Like, no, like, yeah, there's that cohort online and they're really loud, like the K-Hive and the Obama bots, and, obviously they exist, but the majority of liberals just don't really have their politics all that aligned and laid out. They just know that to defeat the right, they need to vote for Democrats. Yet they show up at Black Lives Matter protests and they march and they put their bodies on the line. They just need a more, most liberals just need to talk to and get them to see eye to eye, really, honestly. They just don't know that much, quite frankly. Sure, there are liberals who are staunchly liberal. They know, and that's what they want to be. But most liberals, I assure you, you can just see with how many of them came out for Black Lives Matter over the summer. Like, we live in a bubble. I say this all the time. Like, us, like, hardcore political heads that, like, watch all the live streams and are know all the inside jokes and all the hot topics of the day on Twitter going around current events and leftist politics and right-wing politics and electoral politics and the protests and activism. Like, we are in a bubble. We are a very, very small minority. We are a very, very small minority. And honestly, and I know this takes work. And it's a lot easier to just imagine a scenario where you get into like a fist fight or a gun battle with someone. But you will get so much more done by just organizing. It will take work and it will take time. But there are so many people out there who aren't fascists, who aren't right-wingers, who aren't comfortable centrists, who aren't wealthy elites, who are people like you, who are ready to make a change. They just don't know how, and they don't know what to do. They don't know what they want. They don't know that it's possible. They don't know what's possible. James says Garrett Foster was a libertarian who died fighting for Black lives. I mean, what was his politics? I don't know. I know he was a young guy. Again, ideology is murky for a lot of people. If his interest in politics was just like getting into the BLM movement that this past summer, then who knows where he would have ended up. A lot of people had their preconceived notions challenged by George Floyd killing and Breonna Taylor's killing by police and the Black Lives Matter protests. I mean, the sentiment in this country around the Black Lives Matter movement completely changed. I don't know what Garrett Foster's politics were. But if he was the ally that it looked like he was, then I think there's a good chance. I can't say I think because I don't know, but there could have been a chance that they would have changed if he was a libertarian. And also, there are a lot of places where libertarians, like actual libertarians, not like militia guys, and actual libertarians, like civil libertarians, align with the left. I mean, the left believes in civil liberties. The left believes in a lot of civil libertarian ideas: freedom of speech, freedom of press, anti-war. But the libertarian movement in the United States has been perverted into this weird small business and business first mentality, a free market where everyone fends for themselves, no rules, no regulations. Saving the environment is for pussies, and there should be no regulation to protect the earth and our resources. I mean, if he wasn't that type of libertarian, then he wasn't a libertarian really, in the sense of how the libertarian in the U.S. has been defined. It really has defined itself, quite honestly. I mean, Ron Paul ain't showing up at a Black Lives Matter rally. Nate says, come on, let's not get caught up in labels. I would be considered a communist, but I do not feel that words should define us or limit what is possible of us. I mean, right, but people define themselves. I'm not putting a label on anyone. These are the labels people give themselves. I mean, for example, the Jimmy Dore interview with the Boogaloo Boy. I mean, you can't talk about the interview without talking about the Boogaloo Boys. He went on the show representing the Boogaloo Boys, a label he's given himself. Also, if someone starts espousing fascism, and says, listen, I don't want to label myself a Nazi or a fascist, but, those are my ideologies. I mean, you can label them. They're a fascist. All right, guys, it's late. Once again, I took this super long, and I'm exhausted. Wait, I wanted to read one more comment here about Marjorie Taylor Greene, about how maybe it's not such a bad idea to tie the GOP to Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, you don't need to tie her to it. They're doing it themselves because that's the future of the GOP. Whether it hurts them or not, in the big picture, I don't know. But they know it's not going to hurt them to their base because they've made that calculation, and that's why they are becoming the party of QAnon. We're in for an interesting ride with where the right is headed. All right, let's get to the super chats for today. I don't want to miss these super chats. So, Tina with a super chat. Yay, doomed on a... Whoa, almost dropped my drink. Tina, yay, doomed on a Friday. Have you seen the 3-part doc on Vice, Searching for Q yet? Love your take as an early Q researcher on how they covered it. I have not seen it yet, and I will watch it and let you know. I have to watch it before I give you my opinion. Although I do have it's the very early days of it, but I do have my own little QAnon project in the works. Makes it sound like I'm starting my own conspiracy, doesn't it? I have my mic too far away. Makes it sound like I have my own QAnon conspiracy coming, right? Someone wants to call in. I'll accept it. Last call of the night. Yep, call in now. If you have a family member, or if you know someone who has fallen for the QAnon conspiracy theory and the many conspiracy theories that fall under it, reach out to me. Hit me up. Especially if you want to talk to me, or even if you think that person who is into Q and QAnon would talk to me. Hit me up. DM me on Twitter at MattBinder. Let me take this call. Hey, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, what's going on, man? I'm calling from Queens.
Queens. Nice to hear a fellow Queensite on the phone.
Yeah, I was listening to the conversation you had with the councilwoman who was running the candidate.
Right.
And I wish her the best of luck.
Right,
you know, I'm not really too sure of her district or anything, but I was just really stoked, because it's really hard to find regular people that are talking about these things. You just said it, bro. We're very... I think with all of the talk about how politics took over everything, a lot of us don't realize what you just said. Those of us who pay attention, we're like a fraction of a percentage.
Right. Yeah, I mean, people just, people, if you don't have the like, and I'm only using myself as an example here because I don't know what scenario other people are live in where they can be in this world and consume it if they don't work in it. But I fell into this world 10 years ago. Well, more than that now. Geez, it's 2021, like almost 12 years ago, it seems. Right out of college, if I didn't work in political media, I don't know how I'd have the time to be in this world and also hold down a full-time job. I'm sure if you're if you're a programmer or a coder or a job where you're at the computer a lot, you can probably like fit in listening to these shows while you work. But if you work in the service industry or if you're a labor worker, how can you find the time to work 8 to 12 to 16-hour days and also know everything about what's going on in politics and current events today? It's just not possible. Right.
But for those who like you and many others who, you're drawn to it. I mean, anybody, even if you don't have the time, but you care and you pay attention to it, kudos on you. But for those who go the extra, miles, so to say, to reach out and actually engage people on these issues, I personally, it's my belief that that's not coincidence. That's not, it is unusual, but it's not a coincidence, and there's a reason for it. Like, what if there was not that fraction of a percentage of us that go apeshit over the crazy things that happen politically? What if there was no one? What if everyone was apathetic?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Then you would have, we can't imagine it right now, but we would have a situation much more toxic than it currently is. The very fact that there are those who stand against this fascistic push is the only reason why they still flip-flop. You see, we're in the era right now, I believe, where we're starting to approach a point where they're not going to flip-flop. Like how when the insurrectionists did what they did, immediately McConnell and everybody and all of these so-called, conservative types were against it. And they were against Trump and against the insurrectionists. It took less than 3 weeks. They want to sweep it under the rug.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
if it wasn't for that tiny fraction, I know I'm long-winded, man. Sorry, but I'm older than you guys.
No. I think this is a great call. Please continue.
To me, if it wasn't, name's Julius, by the way, but if it wasn't for that small percentage that you identified of us who really bite down on these things, whether we post something, text something, talk to somebody about it, or like actually people do shows and stuff. If it wasn't for the handful of us that did, these fascists would be utterly unrepentant. They're cowardly at heart. All traitors and seditious types are. You got to do everything in the shadows. By nature, they're cowardly. Most racists we know to be cowardly because they'll say these type of things, do these type of things, and when it comes out, they run from it. Nothing that we say as regular people do we ever have to run from, So if it wasn't for you guys and, everybody like you who really, really care, they wouldn't even flip-flop on their positions. They would just railroad. They would be as arrogant as any of the Nazi films you ever saw before the Allies started fighting back. Strutting in all their glory. This is how they would be.
Right. And first of all, that's a great point. Great call. And to add to that, and I think, people who feel, sort of people who are in this sort of world where they are paying so much attention to everything and they're in the know, I think they have to realize that they have an opportunity to help out those people who just don't have the time or just disengaged for a variety of different reasons, who would agree with them and would be on their side. There's opportunities to reach out. Like, not everyone has to be so terminally online and so terminally political. It's just not for some people, but it still doesn't mean that they can't be an ally and help out with their vote or just with their own voice in their own community or workplace. I mean, everyone could play a part. Not everyone is, not everyone needs to just be, not everyone can just spend every moment doing this, But really great calls. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and feel free to call again in again anytime.
Yeah, I don't know how this works. I had to get the one of your mods was telling me because I thought it would be like a StreamYard link or something, and they says no, you got to get the Skype thing. So I
Right,
just
right,
downloaded it, and I just got it, and it looks like it's sort of set up like Hangouts, where you can almost have like a chat thread, sort of.
right. Yeah, yeah. Skype. Yeah, Skype is. I basically use it because the program I use to live stream has it integrated right in, so I'm able to just pull the Skype calls right onto the stream like
Oh, I
super
like it.
easily.
I
But
like
yeah,
it.
I'm working on getting some other options too for people who don't have Skype. But I'm glad you were able to download it and call in
I
because really great
hey,
call.
like you can't well, appreciate it, man, and you're doing a great job, man. This is the first day that I'm even aware of your channel. Already subbed and everything,
Oh,
and
great, awesome.
so happened to come up on my feed because like if you watch news stuff, they pair you up with people like that, politics and stuff. So I guess that's how it happened. And you came up live when you were talking to the councilwoman, and I was doing some stuff, and I said I'll figure out how to engage them a little bit. But you said something here at the end, and I know you're getting off. You said you mentioned organization and how important and critical that is going forward. And I'm used to seeing a show or hearing something or reading an article that you get impressed by. I'm not used to, you know, raising my eye twice. So the first time was when you were talking to a local politician. You had actual New Yorkers people could hear from us, because normally it's just TV types to speak for us.
Right.
And then the second thing is what you said about this, and that's actually the key moving forward. And I'll shoot you a text, man. It really sparked my interest much more than a podcast I was subscribed to. I think
Oh, wow.
I think you're on the right. I think you're definitely on the right track here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. Really. Have a great night.
Indeed. You too, man.
Take care.
Figure out how to hang up.
I'll hang up for you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I don't know how to.
There we go. Oh, great call. Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate the kind words. Hold on. There's something I want to pull up here on the chat. Oh boy, we're going really late. I gotta. Nayo says, Matt, please don't platform a true believer. These people need private therapy and work, not public display of their following of failed prophecies. The failed prophecies already abused. Oh no, this isn't for a live stream. This isn't for a live stream. This is for something different. I see Renee is trying to call in. Renee, I really gotta call it a night, buddy. I'm sorry. At least for the calls, because I gotta get to these super chats. I gotta close the Skype out for tonight, alright? Next time, I promise. No, that's not an open call to have QAnon believers, random QAnon believers on the show. This is for a non-live project that would be highly edited for a very specific purpose, and not to flaunt anything or to promote any sort of viewpoint or let them espouse something. This is for a different sort of look into how this has affected people's lives. And again, it wouldn't be live streamed because it's not something that can be live streamed. It would need to be, basically like a video project like the Jimmy Dore thing I did. But a little bit different than that too. Come on, where do you think I am? I've been doing this, covering this stuff for how long? You don't think I know? Come on. Pranay says it's live on YouTube now, Matt. Wait, what? What do you mean? You mean this? No, I'm talking about no, obviously this show is live. I'm talking about my call for people who have experience with those who've fallen down the QAnon rabbit hole. Why not live stream? Can't handle the truth, says Nog. No, because this is very QAnon is a very different sort of track than some of these other right-wing movements. And you have completely normal, quite frankly, innocent people who've been brainwashed in ways a bit different than like how white supremacists and neo-Nazis and other right-wing groups grow their ranks. Like, these weren't people looking for a right-wing movement to join. These were just like moms and dads and grandmas and grandparents and grandmas and sons and daughters and aunts and uncles and cousins and brothers and sisters who were manipulated just by being on social media to being brainwashed to believe these conspiracy theories. And I would not put those people on the spot like that. It's inappropriate in my view. I'm not looking for like QAnon influencers. I'm looking for like to talk with people who have lost people to the QAnon rabbit hole. It would be like like how any other person has covered cult movements. You know, it's not really the same as talking about white supremacy and you know. And I'm not talking about like Lynn Wood, the lawyer, who is pushing QAnon conspiracy theories to line his pockets. I mean, I don't. That guy is a grifter and a right wing, hack. I think that QAnon is going to cause. I can't believe I'm still going. It's way past time. But basically, I'll talk about more about the project because it's in the very early stages. I mean, someone was just talking before about the QAnon Vice documentary. Something sort of like that. Obviously, I'm not saying I'm making a series, but I think it's important for people to understand what QAnon has done to real people's lives. I don't think people really understand, honestly. I think a lot of people view QAnon as just this fucking big joke that how the hell did it get so out of hand? A lot of people even tweet to this day, like, where the hell did this stupid shit come from? I wish I didn't know about it. I can't believe I had to learn about this QAnon bullshit. Like, I've been following this for 4 years now. I mean, I wish it was just a prank. I wish it was just a big joke, but it's not. I honestly think in the long run, QAnon will have the most long-standing damage when compared to these other movements that people are even more aware of or have been more aware of. There will be people who've lost family members, relationships with family members, till the day that family member dies over QAnon. The same can't be said for the Proud Boys or Patriot's Prayer or Iron March or the Boogaloo Boys or the alt-right in general or whatever right-wing movement flavor of the month or the day or the week or the year. Groypers. QAnon is very, very different. There is overlap, obviously. There were QAnon people who stormed the Capitol. But it is, at its core, not the same as any of those groups. Way too many innocent people brought into this in ways that those other movements could only dream of pulling off. And, like, I would have right-wingers on this show. But I don't know if I would have even a QAnon influencer on the stream, because what would the debate be? What would the debate be? Like, you could have an argument with a right-winger who's extremely prejudiced, but like there is something real there in terms of why they feel that way. How do you talk to someone who lives in a complete fantasy world? Although, when it comes to like having a elected official like Marjorie Taylor Greene on the show, absolutely I would do it. Absolutely, I would do that. All right, let's do the super chats, and that's the show for today. I don't remember if I read Tina's. Let me get back to Tina's. Tina, yay, Doomed on a Friday. Have you seen? Oh, no. Okay, I did get to this. I have not seen it yet. I'll let you know when I see it. Midnight Pizza Man said, I'd call in, but I have nothing interesting to say, so here's some stonk money. All right. Yes, I talked about that was the big topic on the Majority Report this past Thursday when I was on. We didn't even talk about it this episode. I do want to talk about it, though. Not today, but I will be doing an episode on what happened with the stock market, with GameStop and everything, because there's something interesting there. Oh, and I saw some people ask in the chat, how would they reach out to me about the QAnon thing? Go to tweet me, tweet at me, DM me on Twitter, twitter.com/Matt Binder. Just hit my DMs are open. DM me. Nang says, you ever consider that QAnon is stopping civil war? QAnon is calling for the stand down and trust the plan. That's why a lot of right-wing movements don't like them. A lot of white supremacists, a lot of Proud Boys do not like QAnon because they feel like it is keeping people disengaged from actual real-world action by just letting them sit back and trust the plan. Kurt says the Q Trump guy who Zero Books guy talks to on his stream is entertaining. Yeah, that's from what my read was that guy seems to be a guy who's a Trump supporter, who is political but believes QAnon conspiracies. I mean, when I think of QAnon, that's not really who I think about solely. I don't think people realize really that QAnon isn't just a political movement, even though it's based in politics. There are people who believe QAnon conspiracy theories that don't even realize it's a political thing. Like, yeah, I would talk to someone on a live stream who is in that area, because that's a political conversation. And just because they're conspiracy theorists doesn't mean it's not based in their love for Trump. That's a political conversation. That's different, though, than the broader QAnon movement I'm talking about. Like, I would not have someone on here who thinks that there is a global satanic pedophile ring being run by cannibals, and that's their complete worldview of the situation. They're not like a Trump supporter, because I don't think, do people realize that? There are people who don't even realize it's a Trump thing, even though it's a Trump thing. Like, I wouldn't have, like, the anti-masker faction on, really. I wouldn't have the anti-vaxxer faction on. 'Cause what would be the argument? These people know the facts. They just refuse to accept them. Like, there's really no point to that. And I guess if I did, I would do, like, a taped interview, so it wouldn't just be like them espousing. It would be something where, like, I would extract portions from it in order to explain to people why. Like, I wouldn't let them promote their shit. I don't know. It would be different for each individual. Let's leave it that way. Because, like I said, I'm open to talking to anyone, but it wouldn't be for them to promote their dangerous ideology. It would have to be more of there would have to be a larger point to it. And if all there is for them to promote their dangerous ideology or beliefs, then there's no point to it. You sell me on a reason to have you on the show, then I'd consider it. That's what I'm trying to say. Penelope says, Epoch Times ads are the reason I spend money for YouTube Premium. Renee says, you behave with Matapacos Voxites. I don't know what that means. Renee also says, another super chat, Sam already used the word Strasserite versus Jimmy Dore. Right. Samantha Sider says, just so you have in a live stream, loved your Dimmy video. Thank you. Renee says, another super chat from Renee. You might want to sit down for the... You might want to sit down. But the U.S. isn't the center for political activism internationally currently. Right. Brent Andrews, the super chat. Thanks for staying up late. Keep those gold vids coming. Thank you, Brent. MD with the super chat says, Matt, I've been a fan of yours since finding you on the Majority Report last summer, and I recently joined your channel. What's your live stream schedule? This is sort of where I shoot myself in the foot. The show is in this bizarre in between where it's just, and I'm not saying this to put down where we're at, because I wouldn't do this show if I wasn't happy with it, obviously. But it's in this bizarre area where like I do a lot of other stuff and I can't dedicate a set time to it. Like I set time to it aside each week, but I basically have been recently for a while, for like many months, it was Thursdays at 9 or 9:30 p.m. depending on the guest I had and what the guest could do. But then I had to recently transition due to various different things. Like past week, I was working so much on my full-time job, writing and reporting on stuff, and also the Jimmy Dore video that I was not able to line up the show in time for the Thursday episode, so I did it for Friday. And the week before that, I think, was on a Wednesday, because Jared Holt, who I had on, could do Wednesday. And then the week before that, I did Monday. That week was because that was the day of the inauguration. It was the Inauguration Day show. And then I had the that was that week where I did 3 shows in a row, like multi-hour long shows in a row with the Georgia rally, the Georgia election night show, and the Insurrection Day show. So it was on Thursday, but really the best way to find out, because the show could change there's always a show each week. Unless I say that we're skipping a week and I'll double up a following week or something because of other reasons. But 9 times out of 10, there's a show a week, and it usually lands Thursday, sometimes Wednesday, sometimes Friday. On very rare occasions, it could be Monday, Tuesday, Saturday, or Sunday. But the best way to know is follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, because I'll always set up the live stream before the show starts, at least a few hours before the show starts. If you're a patron, you will receive the email because I post it on Patreon hours before the show starts. Eventually, the goal is that I have enough patrons where I can dedicate more time to this and not other things. And by doing that, I can assure a specific night can be dedicated to this. I would love to do this. Just give you guys weekly stream, daily videos, or a weekly stream plus a weekly long-form video like that Jimmy Dore video. But it's just a matter of how much time I could put into it while also providing for my family. But thank you so much for subscribing and for your interest in being able to follow when the show is. I will always let you guys know when there's going to be a show. You can probably guess it's going to be on a Thursday most weeks, but there'll be occasions where that changes. Vinny says, your honest opinion, are we screwed? I don't see how the left can win people over when you have so many right-wingers now using left buzzwords like warmonger or mainstream media. Their media is so well-funded. I mean, but they don't believe in the things the left does. If the Boogaloo Boys woo you with their anti-war stance because the mainstream media promotes and their promotion of their anti-mainstream media stances, like, I mean, most people should have an anti-war stance. That shouldn't be a solely leftist value. Like, it should be good that anti-war has been. I mean, they're not anti-war for the same reasons you are. They're not concerned about, Middle Eastern children's lives. They don't want us. They don't want their tax money being wasted on a bunch of brown people. That's how they look at it. Like, it's a completely different viewpoint, even though they land on the same general stance. Like, we don't align with that. If there was like a Holocaust going on, God forbid, again, of a group of people, and honestly, there have been genocides that look close. But if there was like a situation where it was getting like a Nazi Germany all over again, then, like, I mean, the right wouldn't want to help anyone. I'm sure there'll be leftists that wouldn't either, but I don't know. I don't know how do you not if there's a situation like that again? I mean, the U.S. acted too late even then. I mean, I'm anti-war fully and wholly. But if there is some dictator mass slaughtering millions of people, I mean, do you just let them? I mean, the right would continue with their stance of non-engagement. Nestor points out Native American systematic genocide is still happening now in the United States right now. Right. Right. Well, I mean, that's not something to go to. That's not a situation where you'd have a war, though. You'd fight a battle. Like, that is literally that's a policy battle, honestly. We need people that will fully create policy that helps the Native American people. I mean, it's got to go way further than just you know what I'm saying, Nestor? Like, you that's not a troop battle there. That's a policy issue. Adored Pariah says, opened a can of worms there, Matt. I mean, it is a rough thing for the left. You know, what would you advocate for if there was something like that happening again? I mean, that's why we should advocate for everything possible to not get to any of those situations. Afqua says, mentions how Trump pulled out of the Iran deal. Right, that's why the left has to be fully on board with any sort of policy, any sort of position that avoids any scenario that would get us into war at all. I mean, Hitler didn't need to rise to power. And again, to Nestor's case, it's if you bring up Native Americans, that's fully a policy issue. Like, what would be boots on the ground there? I mean, that's what's happening to Native American people is the United States government once again giving them the shaft and not caring about them. That's fully a policy issue. Brent with another super chat says, promote your Patreon. Right, patreon.com/MattBinder. A lot of people who are listening to this on the audio version are going to be patrons. But if you're listening live right now, patreon.com/MattBinder. Renee says, lots of the Vosh crowd is subscribed to Doomed because Vosh promoted it. Dow Mal Vosh. Right, I thanked Vosh in the first half of the show, right before we went to the patron half of the show. Vinny says, one last question. How much do you think guys like Rogan contributed to QAnon growth, directly or indirectly? I don't think Rogan himself had so much to do with QAnon directly. I would need to know more about who he had on in terms of like the QAnon tentacles. When it comes to like COVID stuff and the anti-vaxxer stuff and the anti-maskers and those guys. In terms of like the Trump-based QAnon conspiracies, like the base of QAnon, like the stuff Q pushes on 8kun, I don't know. I don't think he had that much to do with that. All right, guys. I went. Jeez, I was supposed to. I said I was going to end the show an hour and a half ago. I did it again. Yeah. I mean, listen. I honestly don't know. You guys have me, thinking a lot of stuff here, and I a lot of these positions. It really depends on the scenario. Chris says Eddie Bravo is promoting QAnon directly. Who's Eddie Bravo? Is that a Rogan guy or something? That's a name I'm not familiar with. Did he go on Rogan's show? I'm not familiar with this guy. So he has been on Rogan's show. I have to look more into that. What QAnon thing? I don't think I said this actually, and Nestor brings it up, but that's what I hinted at when I said Hitler didn't come in like rise in a vacuum. Nestor brings up Hitler was inspired by the United States white supremacy doctrine. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, but I didn't mention. I got sidetracked. Thank you for bringing that up, Nestor. Yeah, I mean, we could avoid all these things. If we're truly anti-war, we avoid all these things by literally advocating for our leftist ideals and making sure they become a reality as much as we can. Because I don't want anyone to get hurt. I don't want anyone to fight. I don't want any gunfire. I don't want any... no. I mean, because who'll be on the brunt, who'll receive the brunt of that. All right, guys. I gotta jump. Everyone's telling me there's a cohort in the chat that wants me to keep going, and a cohort that's, for my own sake, it seems like, asking me to jump off before I start falling off live on the stream. Folks, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a please check out the Boogaloo Boys video on my YouTube channel if you haven't already. YouTube.com/MattBinder. Subscribe to the podcast, doomedpod.com. You know where to follow me on social media. Just search Matt Binder. Patreon.com/MattBinder for those watching live. And if you're listening to the audio version, that means you're already a patron. And I just want to say thank you so much. I could not do this without you. And I'm going to give all my new patrons a huge shout out, name by name, on the next show. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, see you all next time on Doomed.